Our story begins on a beautiful morning. The maid wakes up Princess Hilaria, who is fast asleep. The girl is the princess of the principality Guinevere. The subordinate said that they were almost there, so she needed to get ready to leave. The lady was surprised that it happened so quickly because she would have liked to postpone this moment. No one could have even guessed that the girl would arrive at the castle so quickly and without any formalities. 3 other women came to the castle with her, but one of them died. This day, following the previous women, a 5th one arrived. This is our heroine. The girl went here to change the future. Finally, her journey ended, and the carriage parked at the entrance to the castle, and a servant helped her out. Leaves were falling from the trees all around, creating a perfect atmosphere and beautiful air. The assistant was worried because no one had met them. That girl said that it was logical, because there were so many people who had arrived here that it didn't matter who would be the next concubine. In the end, she even changed her mind about taking on this task, and almost decided to send everyone to the devil and return to her hometown. But a senior servant came up to her in a moment. The man gave his name, Murat, senior servant of the imperial castle Vladislav. The girl was greeted with all honors. She examined the Murat. He is a very faithful servant, so much so that he is called the imperial dog. It even seemed a little strange to our heroine that she was met by a person from the emperor's inner circle. Hilara said that it was also very nice to meet you. She added that perhaps the weather was so wonderful today that the horses moved faster. Suddenly, she sharply and cleverly teased the servant, saying that he didn't know anyway, because no one was expecting her. Murat said he was glad, because at least he had time to meet the girl and take her out. Our heroine's assistant was shocked, because it was like a battle of energy. Hilary, having inspected all the imperial gardens, realized that the rumors about their beauty turned out to be true. The assistant was very scared. Everything inside her was constricting, and it only made the girl laugh. She believed she had nothing to fear. Long ago, a layer appeared in her native principality, thanks to which she could see the future, where she refused the emperor. It was simply terrible, and everything around turned to ashes. This was the end only because she refused, so there was nothing more terrifying for her than a future where her native and beloved principality disappeared and turned into a real hell. The ground, the building, and absolutely everything was just burning. Kurashi promised to do everything to prevent this from happening. The imperial dog led them to the castle of the Metal Rose, one of the most beautiful places in these parts. Murat said that His Majesty the Emperor was giving our heroine all this luxury, but Hilara didn't consider it a gift, because she already knew what he would do in the future. And because of that, she was filled with anger. The young lady would never have married the emperor if it weren't for the purpose of saving her native principality. As long as the girl is here, nothing threatens her hometown, and she will be able to change the future. At the castle, she was greeted by the senior maid of honor. She added that it was her honor to serve the girl and invited her into the bedroom. The woman shared that, for the first time in such a beautiful castle, she literally fell in love with the views here, so much so that she forgot to introduce herself. The maid looked strangely at the heroine and her friend Katie, whom she had just introduced. This day, we only had a powerful aroma that even made it difficult to breathe. The girl saw how much the colors brightened all the interior elements in the bedroom, all for the sake of the first night. The maids ignored the woman's questions and asked her to follow them. The girl complimented her and said that thanks to her fair skin, any dress would suit her. The maid suggested a red dress. Hilara agreed to this, although she said that she had brought enough clothes herself. The senior maid changed her expression to a sharply negative one again, because there are rules in Vladislav Castle. The woman added that the heroine does not have the right to wear everything at once. Taking the garment in her hands, she pointed to the flower embroidered on the lining and symbolizing the castle. "I'm a purple flower for His Majesty the Emperor, and a red one for the empress, pink for his concubines, and yellow for his grandchildren." The maid said that she must wear a dress with a flower embroidered on it, or she would break the laws of the imperial castle. Hilara agreed to the rules, and was already mentally sick of such limits. Our heroine realized that she needed to study all the rules of the castle in detail, otherwise she wouldn't be able to do anything. The senior maid added that the guest would have to learn a lot to please His Majesty. The line on this, Hilary silenced her. It was a shame that she had to serve this bastard, but still having regained consciousness, she pretended as if everything was fine. She asked again if the maid's name was Chaloster. Addressing her by name, the girl said she had forgotten who she was talking to. She added that her plans did not include a long delay in this castle. Who had just rested became nervous, and the air in the room seemed to become heavy. Coming closer to her, Hilary said that she didn't care about all these flowers or the other rules. This scared the girl. She didn't know how to act in such a situation. Her dominator position suddenly turned into a weak one. Our heroine firmly took the maid's hand and said that as soon as she achieved her goal, she would leave the palace. Besides, she had never been obedient and did not intend to spend her whole life in this castle. The girl clearly indicated that she would not tolerate anyone occupying a position higher than her. After telling her how everything would be, she asked the maid if she understood everything. The maid had a feeling that the red-haired girl was going to eat her up so much that she pressed on her knee. Gathering her thoughts and exhaling, the girl replied that she understood everything, adding that she would be obedient. Hearing this, Hilary immediately smiled and told her to come to the emperor and inform him that the girl would not spend the first night with him because she felt unwell. The maid didn't know what to do because if she didn't spend the first night with the emperor, she wouldn't become his concubine. The heroine laughed because she came here not under a contract, but as the princess of the principality. It seemed to the lady that no other lady who had ever been to this castle had received as much attention as she had. After that, the senior maid realized that everything was not so simple, because indeed the senior servant Mara personally came out to meet her. Likewise, the conditions were completely different now. Everything came together in the woman's head. Hilary touched the woman's face and said that it didn't matter whether she spent the first night with the emperor or not, because it was all a contract between the principality and the empire. All this is unimportant, even if she becomes a poisonous snake and usurps all power in the imperial castle. She ordered them to think again about their choice and whether they should listen to the girl. She gave the woman a choice. Either she would do as she wanted and soon be thrown out of the castle, or she would become her maid, and in the future, the right hand of the mistress of the castle. Without answering the question of what the girl would choose, she immediately ran to the emperor to tell him how badly the princess felt and that she would not be able to see him in the bedroom today. For a moment it seemed to the maid as if our heroine's pupils had flashed with a golden color. A childhood friend asked the yet too strict heroine about the maid, but Hilary said that Katie worries about little things because even if His Majesty finds out, he won't do anything to her. Such a distinguished person cannot be disturbed immediately, especially after his arrival. It only seems so easy, but in reality, the concubine is supposed to counterbalance the vice of the emperor's mother, and she is just a pawn. The empress wants to put her own son, who is not an exile, on the throne. This game is like a chess game for the entire court, and daughters from various famous families are involved. No one could have thought that the princess would get into this whole mess. Kate added that it was worth being careful because there were other concubines in the castle, so it was impossible for anyone to harm Hilary. But the girl found it funny that everyone was so worried about her. Still, we must not forget why she came here, namely to save her native land from destruction. To preserve her homeland, she immediately begins to put things in order here. The emperor's name was Hadrianus Winfrid. He was a pedantic and cruel man who even used the principality of Guinevere as bait in the war for his own ends. The woman immediately agreed to the marriage so that her hometown would no longer be threatened. She asked Katie to check if there was anyone in the hallway. After inspecting the area around the lady, they said a second later that no one was there. But our heroine knew that spies could be outside the window, so she asked to look there too. My friend apologized and said she immediately closed the curtains. Only now could the woman sit down and release her energy, namely the ability to foresee. The room was filled with various magical yellow butterflies. She touched one of them. Magical butterflies flew throughout the imperial court and all the rooms. It seemed that butterflies were present in almost every room near the castle. Hilary closed her eyes and asked her friend for a magic crystal. It seemed to you that our heroine summoned too many spirits, and there was no other way out because the halls and castle were too large. Holding the stone in her hand, the girl realized that the traces of the rumor and the maids were too intertwined than she thought, and the butterflies would be able to learn more information in any case. It seemed they had taken too few magic crystals with them. Taking out a small bag of stones, the girl wasn't even sure that they would last a month. Kate suggested contacting Mistress Beatrice, but the lady had already sent her a butterfly with a message. Opening the curtains, the girlfriend asked the not yet exhausted main character. The girl replied that everything was fine with her, and she could handle it. But she was still curious about what the emperor himself was doing now. The woman was spying on the emperor, and at that moment, her maid came up and said that the guests were unwell, and that she looked very tired after the journey, and it was also rumored that she was sick. It's funny because the maid took her place. Hilera said that Chelstar probably made the right choice. She has already calmed down because she was very worried about it, pouring stones over it. She added that she would not like to see it become food for butterflies. The princess said she didn't plan on making food. Now she was preparing the maid for later. The lady was pleased with herself because she had done a lot of work and put Adrianius in a bad position with Infrid. Meanwhile, in the other wing, His Majesty consulted with his right hand. Marat said that he was sure that it was all a lie. He added that the princess arrived at the castle completely healthy and looked incredible, and it seemed strange that Chalaster could not properly explain what was wrong with the girl. The emperor saw that the princess had shown cunning as soon as she entered the castle. The servant was afraid that rumors would spread about how one of the concubines was unable to spend the first night with His Majesty the Emperor. This made him laugh a lot, but the young man didn't see anything funny in it, because he didn't understand when the man was planning to produce an heir. Suddenly, the emperor's face changed, and he ordered the princess to be sent medicinal herbs and announced that she would be granted the status of imperial concubines. He also said something that surprised the young man the most, namely that he would like to have breakfast with the girl the next day. Adrianius has not yet seen his wife's face, but during his mother's birthday party, she must sit next to him. The servant couldn't even imagine what it would be like in this situation, because His Majesty doesn't even distinguish between his concubines. It seemed like a disaster to him. Hilara was able to conquer Celestia on the very first day she arrived. The emperor, looking out the window, guessed this. He found the situation quite funny. Hilara was not thrilled, because in any case, the emperor wants to have breakfast with the girl, even if she said she was sick. The maid replied that His Majesty was simply showing concern for her. The senior maid thought to herself that serving for two had never happened before. She could not even imagine that His Majesty would treat the girl in any special way. The maid tried to assure the heroine that in the other wing there was a wonderful chef who would prepare luxurious meals. Sipping tea, Hilera was delighted to see the delicious food she was about to try. She added that the shopkeeper must prepare everything for her guest, who will arrive tomorrow. The woman asked who exactly would be the guest, and upon hearing the name of the Marquis's daughter, Genesis was surprised because she was the daughter of an incredibly influential man. Our heroine nailed the maid's thoughts. She said that the doctor's diagnosis would be ordinary nausea after the road. The woman listened to her and said she would arrange everything. It's strange she seemed to want to follow all of Hilaria's orders. She has a charisma that is hard to describe. She reminds her of the Red Queen of Legends. Hadrianus Winfrid took the throne at the age of 15. He reached the very top by taking power from his mother, the dowager empress, after which many said that his reign was very different from that of the previous emperor. Our heroine knew what rumors were circulating about his beautiful appearance and incredible abilities. At breakfast with the girl, His Majesty only smiled. While the princess was struggling to cope with her swollen face, the emperor was radiant. His face seemed to be made of porcelain. The girl did not look like the terrible witch Marat had taken her for. The man added that he was incredibly pleased to see the woman's appetite, and he also noted that he had been informed about the woman's illness. Hilera said that after a wonderful sleep, she felt much better and thanked her for her care. The man smiled and was happy about this news because he didn't even know how to look his father-in-law in the eye if his daughter was in bad shape. Our heroine saw that he was smiling only with his mouth and not with his eyes. There is a cold and emotionless look in his eyes. It seems that even his skin is permeated with cold. His Majesty immediately got down to business. He even gave a legal night with his concubine. Radi thanked her for the offer, but still refused. She said that she doesn't want to be treated like everyone else, because she doesn't like being on the same level as anyone else. She wants to be special. This interested the guy even more, and he showed him exactly how to please the girl. He jokingly said that he could make her empress right now. But Hilary didn't like it, because she wasn't used to being treated as if they could control her life. The dowager empress is gathering the aristocracy and power around her, and in such a situation, he wants to turn against the principality. The princess doesn't want to expose her back to arrows, so she pretends it's just a joke. Let him go. She added that she was a very jealous and emotional woman, which would negatively affect the empire's reputation, but he didn't care. Touching her face, he said that she just needed to be his beautiful flower. His words were absolute and true. He could literally transform her into a being, no different from a rose or other decoration. This was the fate of everyone who even slightly encroached on the imperial seat. The lady replied that she had no desire to take the place of empress, neither now nor in the future, and would like one promise from the emperor. She asked me to fulfill one small wish. After thinking a little, the man agreed that he could do it. In response, Hillary said that she would get what he wanted most in the world, namely, the old raccoon who lives in this castle. The man's face changed from what he heard. He laughed and said that the princess likes to play with fire. Hilara said this because she was ready to go to any task. The emperor thought for a moment. After that, Hillary thanked him, and His Majesty said that it would be good if each of them got what they wanted. But there is still one unresolved question. Namely, is it mandatory for the girl to meet the dowager empress? The man thought she was completely unscrupulous, because she was also asking to be a shield from the empress. None of his current concubines had such audacity, but this intrigued him greatly. He decided to play along with the girl, and said that he would not allow her to go to the empress. And now that everything had worked out, she wanted to try the butterfly's magic on His Majesty. She thought she could read all his thoughts and plans, but in an instant the butterfly crashed. In one way or another, she guessed about it, because he has something that blocks spirits, and at least he didn't guess anything. At the moment, His Majesty's thoughts are occupied only by the incredible beauty of the princess. After breakfast, the lady sat down to relax, for she had gained a lot during her meal with the emperor. Kate was afraid that someone would see the woman conjuring spirits, but she was sure that everything was a complete secret, because her butterflies were being watched from this room. The subordinate couldn't even guess how many crystals the girl had spent to watch this room. But very soon, Bibi will bring her more stones, so it's not critical. Also, one of the important things that she needs right away is money. The subordinate was asked why she needed money. This is the best tool for catching a raccoon for an incredibly large amount of money. The best trump card she can use now is the illegal arms trade. At that time, there were several clans that were involved in trading weapons, and therefore, if she secretly gained access to this business, she would be able to legalize the trade and then organize the delivery of weapons directly to the castle. Kate was shocked by the woman's plans, but she thought it was just the perfect activity for her situation. Still, this is very dangerous. So in any case, if it is possible to legalize weapons, then this is the most reliable and correct method to increase wealth. After all, it will pay for them taxes that officials appropriate for themselves. But first, she wanted to have a tea ceremony. Kate couldn't wait. She wanted to know who she would invite, and the princess said to wait a bit. Someone she could trust should come soon, because she already knew that the Ajura would be here. The empress was unhappy that the girl dared to have breakfast with the emperor, and moreover did not go to meet her. Despite the fact that she was one of the last to appear in the castle, the heroine wanted to personally look at the face and majesty. The maid couldn't understand what the noise was. The maids began to argue over who should come first to meet each other. Suddenly, the lady was stopped and told that Hilaria was waiting for her. The maid entered the girl's room and introduced herself to her. Ajura was confident and determined. She wanted to take her straight to the empress immediately. But the heroine ordered him to come to her, after which the maid's face changed. Suddenly, the atmosphere became very tense. The woman said she wasn't going to do it twice, and ordered him to come to her immediately. She continued by saying that she was tired of looking the girl up and down. Stepmother was sad because now even the concubine girls considered her an empty place. The father of one of the concubines said that a woman could subjugate someone who did not want to do so, and at the same time, Hadrian would be in her hands. According to the emperor's order, she holds the highest position in this castle. The woman was pleased with these words. Rasmus simply nodded to the woman every time. Suddenly, the woman wanted to meet the count's daughter, Olivia, which alarmed her husband. She said that his daughter is also a concubine, so thanks to her, getting to the other concubine will be much easier. She is sure that Olivia will cope because she is smart and patient. In fact, the count did this purely for selfish purposes, because it would help strengthen the empress's trust. The fate of his clan depends on whom he takes to his side, and some milksucker emperor cannot compete with this woman. Hilera asked the maid who put poison in the cake for the concubine of Venice. The woman was very agitated and worried. She was shocked that the girl knew about something. Venice died a few months ago, and the details of her death are unknown. No one could even imagine that the cause of the girl's death was the cake she ate right before she died. Understanding the situation, the woman was in the jury, was very worried. Our heroine laughed and said that she shouldn't worry because she hadn't told anyone about it yet. She instantly put the maid in her place, and he told her to kneel. Looking down on her, she realized that Charlotte was the most influential. She was the one who could be trusted to organize the tea party. After that, the girl asked why the maid had come to her. She said that everyone in the castle wanted to see her. She added that absolutely all the concubines had gathered in the Canary Castle, which is why she came for our heroine. It didn't matter to Hilary, and this answer greatly surprised Ajura. The lady replied that she couldn't answer the question because she was the princess of the Principality Guinevere. The Ajura had a higher status, but she shouted that no. And based on this, her owner has no right to dictate who comes and who doesn't. The girl said that the Ajura must convey all these words to its owner. It was the first time the maids had seen the Ajura so uncertain and confused. The maid herself was shocked. She thought her heart would sink right into her heels. Everyone in the castle felt the wind of change. Everyone expected something new. Marat wondered why His Majesty was so pleased. The emperor said that Hilaria forced the Ajura to kneel, and this time she really did it. The man liked it, because as soon as she arrived, she immediately cheered him up, and he was looking forward to what would happen next. Marat added that Hilaria had made everyone, even the Empress Mother, move, which worried him because until now, there had been a balance among the concubines. The Duke of Clarinet said that he personally liked such a woman. For him, she will be like a breath of fresh air. The emperor was surprised that the Vanik would say such things. He added that she was truly different from all the concubines who had come before her. She asked for one wish in exchange for catching a raccoon. The migration and the view greatly attracted His Majesty. He seemed to see a rosebud blooming before him. My brother thought that Charlotte wouldn't be able to look at it from the side, and maybe she could arrange something. But Adrianius wasn't worried about that because Hilaria wasn't that ordinary. Marat made a fuss because he feared for the princess's safety, which made His Majesty laugh a little. Beatrice arrived to visit Genesis. She immediately saw the changes that Celester had become Hilary's maid. The lady asked to take good care of the princess because she was worried about her or it seemed to the maid that the woman was talking about a completely different person and not about the princess, because she was saying that the girl might not be completely confident in herself or not be good at understanding people. Bibi asked Irina, her assistant, to bring what they had brought with them. It was a gift for a princess. The box contained luxurious necklaces and earrings with blue, large, and small stones. The woman asked if additional inspection was needed for the jewelry underneath, and the subordinate said that there was no need for that. Arriving at the princess's chamber, the women embraced. They were very happy to meet. The woman told us to bring them black tea with milk and syrup. A friend asked the main character if she checked her maid with a layer, but Hilary said she found another way to check. Firstly, the number of horses that were sold for them was halved, and it is said that the condition of the animals was not the best. This coincides with the beginning of the attack by the Zachary tribe. Most likely, thanks to this tribe, Adrianius tried to strike at the Gineverans, and most likely, he will soon enter into a war with Oswald again. He always had plans for an empire, and Bibi knew it perfectly well. So, she knew perfectly well that a terrible and bloody war would begin after this, and they had most likely already begun preparations. While the princess tries to unite the empire to prevent the destruction of their principality, Bibi asked how she could help. Our heroine immediately asked to check out a clan involved in arms smuggling. This surprised her friend quite a bit. She was afraid that it could be quite dangerous, but the woman had her own plan. To start, she wants to host a tea party because she has so many reasons to be a new concubine. It is before the start of this event that you need to gather all the information to check on Duke Clarinet and Count Nartane, which are known to be the most influential clans, and it would be even better if she could find compromising evidence on them. While the maid was taking out the precious jewelry, the Hrivnia said that whatever happened would be arranged in a week, because during that time, she would put the castle in order. Seeing how many valuables were in the box, because they could survive on this for another 2 months, they were very grateful to Bibi for it. Our heroine's friend was very worried that Celester wouldn't see what was in the boxes. But thank God that didn't happen, and Hilara got high-level stones. Bibi worked hard to find them and promised to get more later. The whale could not be happier with such news and happily carried the box to the right place. Hilira thanked her friend from the bottom of her heart. She added that Bibi knows perfectly well how she feels. Meanwhile, Charlotte was very angry because her maid had not achieved anything. The woman was so angry that she simply didn't know how to control her anger and not take it out on her subordinate. Meanwhile, Bibi and the princess had a meal with delicious tea and cakes. The girl asked who the emperor really was, and Hilary simply replied that he was quite dangerous. My friend thought that was why she refused to spend the night with him, but that's not true. The princess just doesn't like it when someone lies in her bed. This made her friend laugh so much that she couldn't even imagine what the other concubines would do if they heard this. Later, they began to discuss that a ball would begin in a month in honor of the empress's birthday. Hilary's friend asked her if she had already chosen a gift, but the girl simply replied that she was already preparing it. Charlotte is so angry that she broke an expensive dinner service. Here she blamed her subordinate for everything because she was in a bad situation because of him. She completely lost control of herself because some village girl dared to call her names. Of all the concubines I know, she behaved the most respectfully. And in one morning, everything changed. The subordinate wanted to convey that Hilaria was much different from the other concubines. She was a dangerous person, and it was better to beware of her. But Charlotte didn't want to listen to her. The girl was once again not feeling well. The concubine said that it was the maid who failed to cope with the task. The girl ordered a message to be sent to the castle of the Metal Rose, that Charlotte would personally visit there tomorrow. She believed that she could put the girl in her place, and even on her knees. The next day, Lady Hilaria looked simply stunning. Celester was delighted with this. Yet in high society, you need to follow fashion to stay in the spotlight. The dress was so well chosen by the maid that it pleased not only everyone around her, but also the hostess herself. The maids supported Hilary, and she thanked them for it. Finding themselves facing each other, the two concubines simply remained silent, sipping tea. Suddenly, Charlotte apologized for yesterday's incident with the maid. Scylla simply officially replied that there was nothing wrong with it and hoped that it would not interfere with their friendship. Charlotte said she would help her and guide her as an older friend. It immediately became clear that I was referring to a woman and that our heroine was not an ordinary one. She instantly turned the situation around and said that Charlotte should help change the order of this castle. With a smile, she added that she sincerely believes that the woman will cope with this. But the senior concubine said that the villagers did not know how the inner life of the castle worked, so this should be handled by someone who knew how to do it. Our heroine stood up and said that she didn't have time to comfort some little child who wanted to assert herself at the expense of others. She added that she knew perfectly well the cause of Venice's death. After all, Charlotte's face had changed a lot. The woman said that there was no point in leaving anymore and offered a favorable offer. She added that the more impudent her interlocutor is, the less patience she has. The princess asked Charlotte not to be afraid, because she was not going to harm her yet. Extending her hand to the woman, she offered something that completely stunned the woman: to become her friend. Being backed into a corner, the woman had no way out and immediately agreed to this offer. Our heroine thanked her for this and immediately asked Charlotte for one thing. Hilara added that she would like to invite her to the palace for a tea party. The only thing she couldn't do was organize such parties, so she needed help with that. Charlotte immediately agreed to this role. The princess understood that her competitor had decided to reduce the negative momentum for the first time, but still needed to meet with the other concubines. The rival concubine immediately suggested talking to the others. In fact, Charlotte had a cunning plan, which was to conspire with the other concubines and deny Hilary the tea party. The woman believed that everyone would immediately obey her because the upstart needed to be taught a lesson. But our heroine understood this, so she added that she was very happy because she believed that Charlotte had such power, and she would definitely be listened to. She simultaneously ordered what she wanted to be done and questioned the authority of her competitor. Our heroine's plan was going incredibly well now. Only the emperor remained. She didn't know how best to approach him, because his smile was cold as ice, and it was still unknown what was on his mind. None of her butterfly scouts can enter the emperor's room or the room itself, because there is something there that disturbs the spirits. Then, covering her mouth, The girl thought about what kind of person was really hiding behind the emperor's face. Suddenly, Murat ran to his majesty to announce some news. But the man already knew it because he had just heard it from Vaneko. The man was happy because the princess even dealt with Charlotte, who had absolute influence. Murat added that most likely this is not the end, because the main concubine will not give up her power so easily. His Majesty asked which side the aide was on, but he replied that he was not going to root for any of them. He added that the girl held a certain position and was constantly opposing the empress. The conversation between His Majesty and his assistant was interrupted by their colleague, who said that he was on Hillary's side even though Charlotte was his sister. This surprised the emperor, and the young man replied that the girl was not very intelligent, and besides, she was not one of those capable of great deeds. The emperor was surprised at such coldness, even towards his own relatives. Reading from there, he saw that Hillary had even invited Lady Genesis to her place. That the princess and her friend occupied the man's mind, having analyzed everything, he also put on the Filaria and took her side. Murat was very surprised by this. He could not even imagine that this was probably a new romantic story, and perhaps an heir would be born. The colleague said that he had a slightly different opinion about the emperor's strategy and believed that he would adhere to neutrality. Talking with colleagues, Adrianius realized that he needed to prepare some kind of gift in honor of the tea party for the new concubine. The Maratha even more, because His Majesty had never done such a thing and had never paid special attention to other women. The emperor said that it was a well-deserved award because it had made him very happy. He ordered Mara to prepare something related to her status. The man understood that after this tea party, Hillary would bring new changes to the castle. Meanwhile, the princess decided to ask Celester if Lady Olivia was connected to the empress. After all, even though it has a fairly strong rear, it doesn't have the best reputation in the castle. The maid said that Olivia is distinguished by her greedy nature. She is ready to do anything to satisfy her needs. Celester said that on the day the princess had breakfasted with His Majesty, the woman even beat her maid, which surprised even Hillary. Rumor has it that Count Esmus moved to the capital for his daughter and was ready for anything because the fate of the entire family depended only on his only daughter. Our heroine then began to ask about another concubine, namely Jenny, and she replied that the woman adheres to neutrality in her views. From here, our heroine learned that the concubine was communicating with Charlotte and had a connection with the empress with whom Charlotte was at enmity. Such a woman added that she is quite quiet, far from social life, and behaves very modestly. The princess's butterflies showed the same. This confused her, because in the future, she saw she needed to meet her in person. After hearing all the information, the girl thanked the maid and said that she was free. The next day, the four ladies met at a tea party. Hillary announced that she was very happy to meet the girls. The table was filled with various delicious dishes and sweets. The princess added that she was glad because they gathered for a cup of tea, and also added that it was not in vain that she entrusted Charlotte with helping in this matter. The competitor looked very depressed. It was clear that the girl no longer cared about her authority, and yesterday's conversation had greatly impressed her. Hillary also didn't forget about Jane and said that she was glad to meet her, as she seemed to be very quiet. Darkness looked at her hands and saw calluses and excessively protruding joints. Most likely the girl practices fencing. She didn't say a word, but simply drank her tea, saving the conversation about Jane's classes for later to talk face to face. But the last of the concubines was quite excited. The situation was completely incomprehensible because Charlotte had sent her a strange letter, and besides, the new girl was meddling in her own business. Last night at the Begonia Castle, father returned too late. The woman was incredibly angry. The man tried to calm her down by adding that it was just some god-forsaken province and that it posed no threat. But the concubine didn't mean that, because the new one climbs absolutely everywhere. I will also say that Hillary looks like a real witch, and everyone who saw her felt incredible fear. The father replied that the woman was probably just bewitching people. It cannot be ruled out that she was using a spell. The concubine believed that the witch hunt had long since ended, and that most likely the girl simply knew how to speak well and reassure everyone with words. But when she heard about the invitation to the tea party, she thought it was no longer funny, because the new arrival had shaken the authority of even a concubine like Charlotte. The father asked his daughter not to be nervous anymore, because it was harmful to her health. He added that the time would soon come when she would become empress and give birth to a son for his majesty. But the woman doesn't see the point in this, because the emperor doesn't even come to her, and neither the aromas that bewitch nor the cinnamon herbs for pregnancy helped. He offered the girl a drink of a special opal that he was supposed to find and bring from Oswald. The girl was surprised by such a gift, and her father replied that, for her sake, we would not regret anything. He asked her to wait a little longer and trust him. This calmed the girl's anger, and she thanked him sincerely. The conversation even reached the empress, who didn't even guess who had actually poisoned the cake. Her Majesty wants Olivia to get close to the princess and make her leave the castle. The concubine wondered if she had understood her father's words correctly and whether she should get rid of the girl altogether, and he confirmed her daughter's guesses because the empress was interfering too much. Having received the task from Her Majesty, the lady began to think about how to carry it out. We need to find out how the girl grew up and what she hides, even the smallest rumors. My father agreed with this and said that he would try to find the relevant information. The woman promised both her father and the empress that she would not let them down and would kick the impudent new girl out of the house. At the tea party, Olivia suddenly turned to our heroine. She told about the rumors that were going around about the girl, namely that she was not at all well-mannered, and now the woman saw it. She added that if a new concubine arrived at the imperial castle, she should have paid a courtesy visit to the concubines, not ignored them. She also pointed out that it was rude to talk at the current party about how glad the woman was to meet them, while adhering to such gross mistakes in the previous days. The lady shamed our heroine, saying that she didn't even know the basic rules of etiquette. Hilara didn't react sharply to this, she just smiled. In the heroine's native principality, her brother and sister were very worried about her because she was so weak. But the woman reassured the brothers and said that no matter how weak she would still be able to deal with the emperor because she was very smart. Having reassured her brothers, the girl herself became worried because it was hard to support her sister without knowing anything. Since at least Beatrice was in the capital, they all hoped that her sister would be okay. Meanwhile, Kate was very worried about her friend, but as soon as the maid asked about it, the girl replied that no one and nothing could stop her mistress. The maid said that they were talking about the fact that Olivia was not weak in spirit either. Our heroine smiled and replied that the girls probably had no time to be bored because the castle was filled with a huge number of interesting people. Later, we turned to Charlotte and said that it was she who promised to teach and tell about life in the castle, which really scared the girl. After gathering herself a little, she nevertheless confirmed her words. The princess said that after hearing these words, she was very happy because she felt like she was in safe hands. Hilara turned to Charlotte and said that she wanted to hear her advice. Pointing at Olivia, she asked herself how to behave with a person who behaves like an abnormal person and is completely disconnected from reality. Olivia decided not to wait until the new contract was signed and turned to Charlotte. She asked if he would just look at everything the same way and not express his opinion. The princess realized that she had fallen into a trap. Charlotte was in the same trap because she didn't know which side to take, because she would lose anyway. If you think about it this way, every time a new concubine arrived, there were arguments over the order of seniority. But this order never changed. But now the concubine who arrived later than everyone else shook the entire castle. After analyzing the situation, Charlotte sided with Hilaria, saying that they should show her respect because they wanted to be friends with them anyway. Olivia was so surprised to hear that she shouted to Charlotte. The princess saw that the woman had taken her side, although she could have taken the side of the concubine, who was much closer to her. Venice's death was not just an accident, but a well-planned murder. There were rumors that the culprit was Charlotte, who brought the cake, and yet she was simply exposed as the thief. After the death of Venice, her family, the Sebastian clan, went bankrupt because it was widely accused of corruption. The biggest benefit was for Olivia's family. The concubine died and her family disappeared, and this secret was simply hidden. But this is short-lived because there is only one descendant left, Sebastian, who will destroy Guinevere because he wanted to avenge the emperor by spreading rumors about Guinevere. This is how our heroine's principality became a bait for Winfried and found herself on the verge of death. To prevent this, the girl brought her family to her hometown before they were reported. Although the girl does not feel any hostility towards the deceased, Venice for her, the homeland comes first. Marat interrupted the girl's thoughts, saying that she had urgent news. His Majesty the Emperor wants to attend this party. Olivia was shocked to hear this. When the ladies found out the purpose of his visit, and that he wanted to give a gift to his new concubine, the women were surprised. Marat added that he would only come to deliver a small gift. The woman didn't understand why, especially now, but she still said that it was a great honor for her. She thought that His Majesty wanted the other concubines to see him handing her the gift. Hilary thought he wanted to provoke her. This had its effect. The woman's face changed. The lady didn't know exactly how he wanted to test her, and it would be wrong to refuse him. Mentally, she promised Adrianius that she would show him what he wanted. The girl sincerely thanked Marat and added that it was a bit unexpected. Hilary's goal was that the girls would stop fighting, at least for the time His Majesty was with them, because they could not upset him with their quarrels, and she hoped for their understanding. Pointing specifically at Olivia, the girl added that she would like to reconcile with her and resolve all misunderstandings. The girl got up and told me that there was a garden nearby. It was so beautiful that all the bad sediment would immediately evaporate. The princess invited Olivia to walk with her through the garden. The woman immediately perceived this as a threat and had to think. But after a second, she realized that this would only help, so she agreed. She asked Hilaria to go in front of her. Walking through a truly beautiful park, our heroine wondered if today was not a wonderful adventure. She said that as soon as she arrived at the castle, she was immediately amazed by the beauty of the backyard. It was so big and beautifully decorated that Olivia herself agreed. In Olivia's head, because just a few days ago, she was manipulating Charlotte, and now she looks like a girl just admiring flowers. Suddenly, the woman's attention was drawn to incredibly rare shoes, worth 200,000 gold. Looking at the earrings and necklace, she saw that their price exceeded 300,000 coins. She believed that the girl had saved up everything she could to come and make a great impression, because no villager could be that rich. The rumors turned out to be false. She didn't look like a witch, on the contrary. She seemed like a pretty nice girl. Looking at her from the other side, she did not notice that the emperor could see anything unusual in her. In the middle of the castle, there was a beautiful lake. It was here that the princess brought the lion to show it. The woman was truly amazed. She knew about the lake inside the castle, but she didn't know how wonderful and large it was. She is shocked that this place was being protected to give to Hilary. It all really pissed her off. She turned to our heroine and said that it was all strange, because even though she arrived last, she was allocated such a beautiful castle that she herself is a little jealous. On the face, Olivia smiled. She saw a chance to eliminate her competitor in an instant, namely to push her into the water. Suddenly, right before the impact, the girl unexpectedly turned around. Olivia didn't understand why she was falling. At the last second, before falling straight into the water, our heroine caught it. She saw perfectly and knew the thoughts and actions she wanted to take. The woman could not even guess that from the very beginning of their walk, she was surrounded by hundreds of butterflies. At a tea party, there are forces that could be unleashed, but the forest is a wonderful place. Olivia did not take this as a gesture of friendship and was ordered to immediately release her, which the princess did. The woman was scared that she was about to touch the water, and suddenly, she just hovered over it. Yesterday, she said that she thinks Olivia is very stupid, because if she hadn't interfered, she could have avoided serious trouble. Olivia ordered her to be picked up immediately, because the new one was nothing special. Did she understand that the woman wasn't listening to her? Therefore, she decided to reveal one of her trump cards, namely that Olivia killed Venice. The young woman was very scared, because she had killed everyone who was involved in this. If His Majesty found out, it would be impossible for her to avoid death. The princess ordered to behave quietly, and she would not tell anyone anything, and Olivia must behave like a mouse. But the concubine was not going to obey. She understood that Hilary already knew about her weaknesses, and she needed to be killed immediately. Realizing that she would not be able to negotiate with her, the woman simply let her go, so that she could gurgle directly into the water. Behind the princess, her friend and maid were already standing. Olivia yelled at them both and ordered them to disperse. Hilaro said that the emperor was coming, and if he saw her in this form, the woman's position would change greatly. Olivia started screaming and telling me exactly why Hilary had fallen there, but Lady cried and said that she was the one who caught her, after which the woman broke free herself. His Majesty the Emperor ordered this quarrel to stop, because such a beautiful garden is not a place for quarrels and noise. Olivia asked the emperor to judge them because Shilara pushed her but His Majesty did not consider such slander to be new because everyone present, including him, saw the woman fall into the water herself. All of the woman's further excuses sounded futile and were suddenly interrupted by Hadrian ordering her to immediately shut her mouth. He ordered the maids to take Olivia to the castle before she froze, especially since the weather was cool. Meanwhile, the tea party continued. Shilara sincerely thanked His Majesty for managing to deal with the situation. The girl pretended to be very scared and not used to such treatment. The man smiled and simply replied that he was on the side of truth and supported her. He hoped that a small gift from him would comfort the girl and ordered the Marat to present it. It was a beautiful necklace. The emperor ordered it especially for her with golden topaz because it resembles her eyes. He looked straight at her while Shilara was going crazy from such strange information. After all, her eyes only turn yellow when she uses butterflies or controls spirits. She immediately started going through all the moments when being in front of the emperor. She could have let this moment slip, but she never remembered it that way, so she couldn't understand how he knew that. She would like to believe that this is just a coincidence, but no matter how much she wants it, the reality is different. She replied that most likely His Majesty had confused her with another concubine because she had blue eyes. His Majesty replied that he was talking about the shape of the necklace, which resembles her eyes. Hearing this news, the girl calmed down, but still she had a feeling that His Majesty was suspecting something. The emperor asked her to wear this necklace personally, and the woman could not refuse. His hands seemed icy. The heroine's body began to shiver, and because of the fiery spirits, she had a fever. In addition, the emperor's skin is much colder than the skin of ordinary people. The man was in no hurry and carefully put on the pendant. After finishing the task, he brought his lips to her ear and whispered that she was incredibly cute. When he left her, he pretended that everything was ready. The man immediately complimented her, noting that the necklace suited her beautifully. The lady was stunned by this turn of events. Adrianius apologized if perhaps the previous necklace looked weaker than her other jewelry, but the girl liked it. This was the end of their conversation, as he still had a large number of urgent matters to attend to, and he wished them a wonderful time in the company of noble ladies. The emperor's colleague noticed that the girl actually looked very pretty, and the rumors that she was scary were not justified. But still, it felt like looking into her eyes. You could see the bottomless seabed. His Majesty thought that the assistant had been looking at the girl for too long, so he ordered him to be more careful, otherwise he would be punished. Here the Maraz finally understood that His Majesty did not treat the girl the same way as he did the other concubines. He directly asked whether Adrianius cherished Princess Hilera, but he didn't answer anything, just ordered to go to another building. For our heroine, this day was very tiring. She couldn't even lift her head while tasting the treats. Kate brought the crystals, and the woman was not into them. She asked if she needed anything else, and the girl immediately said no, so her friend was free for today. Even though the princess said she could rest, Kate couldn't relax so easily. Suddenly, the older maid noticed that the relationship between them had become much better. At first, Kate didn't understand, so the maid told her that His Majesty even put the necklace on himself. A nice woman wanted His Majesty to get closer to a woman, because it seemed to me that it would only be better that way. The whale hoped that the girl was not listening to their conversation with the help of butterflies. The woman asked her thoughts, and her friend asked her not to say anything unnecessary because she had no interest in His Highness. Keeping the spirit of the princess, the man noticed that his owner was unusual, and he also regretted that she was completely indifferent to him. He found it interesting that the princess controlled the spirits of fire, but it was obvious that it was just a butterfly, and the heat was coming from it like a stove. He promised not to kill him, but simply to be friends if he promised not to run away. After all, even if he wants to fly away, he won't be able to, because now he's locked in a special cage. The man smiled and said that they weren't that close to him yet, so they had to be a little patient. He became incredibly curious about what the woman heard and saw, so when they became friends, he would give it a name. After thinking a little, Adrianius gave the butterfly an answer. Now its name is Hill. Our heroine looked closely at the necklace she was given, because she still couldn't understand the first reason for it. It seemed to her that Adrianius simply wanted to mock her, and that she would tremble with fear. The lady wanted to find his weak spot. If you think about it like that, it's very strange that he became emperor at all, despite the fact that the people love him. But most of the influential aristocrats supported another prince, and it was probably much more profitable to side with the son of the second empress who had power. But after the death of the previous emperor, Prince Nelson was sent to distant lands, and the crown was worn by Hadrian. The woman thought that perhaps he had some kind of agreement with the past emperor, or some kind of secret. She also found it strange that the butterfly died immediately as soon as it touched his body. It seemed completely confusing. That same evening, the girl ordered the fire spirit butterfly to go to the BB and tell her that the girl would like to see her tomorrow. Meanwhile, Olivia was incredibly angry with Hilaria because the emperor had taken her side. The maid said that others were saying that it looked as if the woman had fallen into the water on her own. Hearing this made the woman so angry that she almost hit the maid. The maid explained that they don't think so, but yet this is exactly the version that is spreading within the castle. Here the girl thought, because most likely the princess was using some tricks. Olivia noticed that the lady was behaving like a witch. Suddenly, she remembered something about ancient times. After all, people used to hunt witches in the past. Having conceived a cunning plan, she ordered a person to be sent to Geneva, only so that her father would not find out about it. This person must find out who Hilara is, and whether she is really a witch. First of all, they need to find evidence that she controls spirits. Previously, witches caused enormous damage to the local area, so the emperor of that era personally declared a witch hunt, and as a result, anyone could receive a death sentence. After the war began, the abnormal witch hunt stopped. The empire tried to annex neighboring small states and unleashed a very long confrontation. This war was won by the Red Queen, who was in the knightly order of the empire. She received recognition for her exploits, and the main state, namely, the Principality Guinevere. The maid wondered if the woman really wanted to do this, because by trying to tarnish the princess's reputation, she could end up in an even worse situation. After all, if His Majesty finds out about this, things will go downhill. But Olivia wasn't worried about it because the Empress herself was behind her. And even if something went wrong, she could always blame someone. Olivia believed that it was necessary to remove Hilary when the Emperor would already be hers as well as the entire castle. Mara devised because the Empress wants to visit another building again. Last time she claimed that all the data was fabricated. My colleague thought it was because of Hilary's new concubine, because they say she didn't visit the Empress, which means she wants to cause a scandal. The Emperor ordered the Marat to take better care of his sister, because he had been too cold towards his only sister lately. The guy started making excuses, but His Majesty ordered to simply do what he asked. Marat apologized and realized his mistake. After thinking about it, he realized that the girl could be depressed because of Hilary. His Majesty ordered to inform Marat's sister that he provides his support and plans to transfer her to a strong factory in the near future. This surprised my uncle so much that he was speechless for a few seconds, after which he turned to His Majesty and said that showing sympathy for several girls was not the best idea. His Majesty also added to the Marat that he should announce to Mrs. Hilaria about tomorrow's joint breakfast because she had introduced a new order here. The subordinate understood that His Majesty was transferring the fabric business to Charlotte in order to give Lady Hilary more power. The Emperor agreed to this and said nothing more. I was very curious whether His Majesty wanted to make Hilary his wife, but he refused to answer anything. It was necessary to get permission for breakfast as soon as possible. Then he would have less trouble. Hearing this, Marat agreed and ran to do the work. The Emperor was surprised because he did not know that the Marat would be able to receive the Empress. The arrival of the Empress was announced in the castle, and the woman solemnly entered the hall. The Emperor congratulated the woman, adding that they had not seen each other for a long time. Upon entering, Her Majesty immediately got down to business and told them what was being rumored about a new concubine in the castle. He agreed, saying that it was Princess Hilaria from the Principality Guinevere. The man said that she lived in cold lands and was physically quite weak. They hadn't even been able to spend the night yet, but he was able to persuade her to have breakfast together. Her Majesty, upon hearing about the woman's illness, replied that she should be treated with understanding because she had come from a small village on the edge of the empire. But in fact, according to the woman, she made a terrible mistake, namely not visiting the oldest lady in this castle. Hadrianus asked for mercy, since the Empress was one of the oldest people present. The woman agreed, because she had to set a good example. I say she added that she wanted to organize a tea-drinking ritual to get to know his new concubine better. The guy said he heard about how Princess Hilaria also wants to arrange this to get to know other concubines. Hadrianus believed that they invited the empress first. The woman's face changed greatly, and His Majesty added that perhaps it would be worth coming without an invitation. The young man saw that the madam was very angry. The emperor believed that if a woman wanted to stay in the castle to sharpen the knife of revenge, she had to leave all her pride behind. The empress believed that the new concubine had a lot to learn. She couldn't calm down, knowing that she still hadn't been invited to the tea ceremony. Adrianius added fuel to the fire by saying that the new concubine couldn't have specifically excluded her from the guest list. The empress agreed with him and said that she would wait for the invitation. The young man thanked her and added that she must have liked Hilaria because the girl was incredibly cute. The empress didn't sit there for long. She said it was time for her to go. His Majesty asked his mother to be careful. The woman wanted to return the throne to her son at any cost, even if she had to sell her soul to do so. Seeing that Hadrianus had invited her to breakfast again, the lady did not understand why she was the one, since there were other concubines. The maid wondered if this meant that the emperor liked her, but Hilaria thought it was complete nonsense, because it was completely out of his style. The princess ordered the emperor to be informed that she was extremely unwell and would not be able to go out for breakfast. The maid bowed and thought that this was really not the emperor's style at all. And besides, our heroine was not at all interested in him. Suddenly, in an instant, the lady changed her mind and said that there was no need to pass on anything because she was going down to have breakfast with His Majesty. But there was one condition for her, coming namely, a change of place for breakfast. The maid listened to the order and immediately began to carry it out. It occurred to her that her mistress was up to something. Thanks to the fiery spirit, the emperor could listen to absolutely all the conversations between Hilary and his subordinate. He tapped on the cage and added that his new owner wouldn't let him get bored because he was doing great, thanks to our heroine. And because she was such a great distraction, he was able to take advantage of the time and attach a butterfly to the surviving members of the Venice family. He turned them into his puppets and sent them to the Sirov castle. Everything went as smoothly as planned, and the emperor was happy because the spirit's owner had made his job incredibly easy. Hearing the conversation between the lady and the subordinate, he became upset again because it turned out that the woman was completely indifferent to him. He even jokingly asked the spirit if he had told her that the emperor was just as indifferent to her. Meanwhile, the butlers and maids were preparing the breakfast area. It was a beautiful and sumptuous table, with various meat and salad dishes. At breakfast, His Majesty thanked the princess for accepting his invitation to breakfast. He wondered why Hilary didn't want to eat in the regular dining room, so he decided to have breakfast outdoors. The lady looked closely at everyone around her. His Majesty thought something was wrong, and Hilary simply replied that she liked everything and was delighted with how well everything was prepared here. The emperor was glad that he had not made a mistake with his choice, because he had chosen the perfect time, because right now the sun is at its most pleasant in the garden. But the girl was not delighted. She thought she would die from the servants' gazes sooner than from the scorching sun, so she suggested dismissing the servants. His Majesty asked for a little patience, even though it was inconvenient, especially since they never knew when danger might befall them. Adrianius shared that apparently the other concubines were very jealous, but Hilaria said that she had always been an object of envy, even if we exclude His Majesty's increased attention to her. This answer interested the emperor, but suddenly he asked if the lady was so serious every morning, or if she did it on purpose to look nicer to him. Hearing this, the lady almost spat out what she was eating. It seemed to her that he was mocking her, because she was ugly and beautiful was always beautiful. This made the emperor laugh. This reaction of her husband surprised her greatly. She did not know how to behave. He added that he couldn't stop because it was too cute. It seemed to Marat that His Majesty was laughing again, as he had never done before. The princess replied that the necklace was enough to attract her attention, and the emperor replied that this was just the beginning. He didn't tell me that in the future there would be other people who would show more interest in hers. After all, the more the emperor is interested in her, the more noble families will support his decision, and then power in the empire will fall into her hands. The girl put down the dishes and said that she was grateful for this once again, and didn't know how to react to it. The emperor replied that if the girl had any difficulties, she should not be ashamed and immediately tell His Highness about them, because he would always be on her side. While tasting the wine, the princess did not understand His Majesty's words and did not believe that he would always be on her side. Holding a glass of wine, she said that in that case, she had to admit honestly. She also wanted to fulfill some wish of her husband, and without thinking twice, he requested a meeting with the dowager empress. The princess could not understand why this was so necessary, but the emperor said that there was nothing of the sort. And besides, he could not understand why the princess disliked her so much. So actually, to put it mildly, the girl gives me goosebumps just from looking at her. She knows everything, because in the future, the woman will do many bad things. But it was necessary to answer something to His Majesty, and the girl added that they simply did not have the same characters. To save the Principality of Winfred, you need to sacrifice the Principality of Univer, and she saw the original sources. The cause of the destruction of such a powerful empire was only one person, and that was the Dowager Empress. She secretly sold various information about the Principality of Guinevere to all enemies. Our heroine believes that this is an act unworthy of any ruler. Returning to breakfast, the princess's thoughts were interrupted by the emperor. He wondered if she would do the same. The lady didn't understand what he meant, because she didn't look like that kind of person. Adrianius thought to himself that she was very cute getting angry like a cat. Suddenly interrupting the conversation, he immediately asked how she felt about getting a cat, which completely confused the lady. It felt like the guy wanted to play a trick on her, but he said he didn't plan anything like that. He again found it cute that the lady reacted this way to everything, and it made her incredibly angry. She didn't understand how she could repeat that when talking about serious things. The emperor asked to meet with the Dowager Empress, because he wasn't asking to sit with her around the clock, but simply to show attention. The princess agreed, and added that he had persuaded her. He suggested inviting His Majesty to tea and dinner. The woman agreed with him, because it seemed reasonable. Adrianius said that Her Majesty had finally recognized the princess's value, and finally wanted to establish contact. The man believed that Hilaria would not want to talk to a woman after such a conversation. But in reality, even all the imperial treasures wouldn't be enough for our heroine to want this. His Majesty showed nothing with his face, but the main character was watching him closely. The princess saw a Gomek looking for His Majesty, so she immediately asked if he trusted him. The heroine herself believed in his patriotism, and not his loyalty, although she believes he could be useful. Now Adrianius is forced to leave the girl, because most likely the Duke came on an urgent matter. In parting, Hilaria turned to His Majesty and suggested that she get a haircut because her hair always got in his eyes. And it seemed like he was uncomfortable about it and ultimately said, just ignore it. Suddenly, he immediately agreed. He thanked the woman for showing concern. At the end, he said goodbye again, and in her opinion, smiled strangely. Adrianius will soon find true love. It's Princess Malin Proton from the Proton Empire. She will arrive as an envoy and win the heart of the emperor, and then take the place of empress. This will happen after the reform in the ruins. Our heroine could not be interested in the emperor, because she is the complete opposite of Malin, and in any case, she does not want to be associated with it. Still, one unresolved question remains, namely, that somehow she cannot use her power, while she cannot hear the other. Perhaps this is the work of His Majesty. Maybe he knows how to control the power of spirits, or appeal to them, and in any case, it is dangerous for her. The woman just met a Hilaria butterfly. Fortunately, so far, everything is calm, and no problems have been observed. The parents were happy for their daughter, but the brother is still stressed, because they always have to ensure their sister's safety, even if it's far away. And that's the most important thing for him right now. He named the quarter Sebastian. It was he they should send to protect Hilaria. In addition, he is not Guinevere's child, so he will be able to safely visit the imperial capital, although if his true identity is revealed, Hilary may be in danger. While he's young, he can disguise himself as a girl. That way he won't arouse suspicion. Considering all the pros and cons, Mom still thinks they don't need to rely on Sebastian, because she has no idea what might happen if they send Kartal there by himself. Since there is no other way out, she keeps pouring her spirit into him. A blue butterfly emerged from the woman's hand. It was a spirit named Eli, and she wanted to ask for something. She wanted the spirit to help the cart find Hilaria and look after this child. During symbiosis with the butterfly, they will be able to release it from the principalities. The young man must go in search of Hillary, and the butterfly will follow the will of the princess's mother as its own. Having met Bibi, the girl asked her for help because she understands magic much better than she does, and will be able to see traces of its use. This greatly surprised the lady because they had crossed paths several times at banquets, and nothing like this had been found. Maybe he's hiding them on purpose, because an empire that hunts witches wouldn't tolerate an emperor who uses the magic of the same witches. Boy was asked where our heroine's suspicions came from, whether the butterflies had told her something. But in reality, they only die immediately upon contact with him. The friend also realized that something was wrong and needed to find more evidence. Maybe there should be some notes somewhere, and besides, Vanek and Marat are definitely covering for him. The princess had an epiphany. She had really forgotten about Duke Vaneko. If her guesses were correct, she would be able to win him over to their side. After all, he primarily protects not the emperor, but the empire. The girls met him on a walk and were happy about it. He was pleased to meet the lady because she was the center of attention. The woman joked that it was all fate because they unexpectedly ran into each other in such a place. But he wondered if she had just been out for a walk with a friend. But she didn't answer this question. She simply asked in return if the Duke would like to visit the Palace of the Metal Rose. Looking into the girl's eyes, he was mesmerized because they were like an ocean drunk with thought. He didn't even realize how he immediately agreed. She asked what day would be convenient for her husband to visit her. Sunny, cloudy, or just tomorrow. He won't be on duty tomorrow because it's his only day off. Bibi promptly told her friend that they would be selling weapons tomorrow, and she believed that the owner of the clarinet was interested in it. The lady said that some wonderful gunpowder had recently been brought in, and she thought the young man wanted to go to the market to buy some for himself. While he didn't understand anything, Hillary added that he was probably preparing for a hunting competition. The princess added that the day was not far off when the raccoon would be returned from exile, and she thought it would be nice to hunt him together. The man sharply replied that she was walking on the edge. When you added that, this is probably not a reason to treat her badly. It was true, and now he understands why the emperor loved her. The lady added that she wasn't trying to negotiate with him. Her only question was whether they could cooperate or whether she would have to go against him. For example, she has something that can hurt him right in the heart, just like stupid Charlotte and Olivia. Therefore, her request for a meeting tomorrow cannot be refused. She assured him that it would benefit him more than her. After such persuasion, the young man agreed, and they decided to end it there. Still, he wondered whether the emperor would allow his concubines to take such a walk. But the lady replied that he himself thought so. In that case, the young man replied that he would expect her at 11 in the morning. A little confused and thoughtful, the man glanced at the women. Upon arriving at the emperor, he immediately asked how their meeting had gone. He immediately said that His Majesty wanted a meeting between his subordinate and Hilaria, that they had a good chat and asked what exactly they were talking about. The young man was a little nervous, but still told me that Lady Hilaria had invited him to be the creator of the Metal Rose. The man was very surprised when he heard this information. Then, a moment later, he smiled and asked if he agreed. You know what responsibility he could face. He immediately refused her, and they agreed to meet outside the castle tomorrow. His Majesty said that this will be her first time leaving the castle grounds, so we order you to look after her. The man was disturbed by the fact that the emperor spoke to him in an informal tone and addressed him as you. Since tomorrow is a day off, it would be a good idea for him to go see a play. The subordinate agreed and said he would be grateful for it. Since the emperor has personally been doing this for a long time, he doesn't want stupid rumors to spread. And it seemed to the young man that His Majesty was angry, so he agreed with everything he ordered. Suddenly, before saying goodbye, Adrianius reminded them that they would most likely meet Lady Charlotte. He thought they would have something to talk about. This also scared the boy, and as usual, he simply replied that His Majesty was a little angrier than usual today. It seemed to the emperor that fate had reached him sooner than he expected. Walking through the square, our heroine was shocked because everyone was talking only about her. The girl holding her breath heard everyone whispering after her. Bibi shared that this has been happening to her since she arrived, and yet it seems strange that it bothered her. The princess pointed to the place where they were having breakfast. It was a beautiful courtyard dining room. The girl immediately began to analyze everything around her. Grabbing the leaf, she felt that it was blowing with absolute cold, so she asked her friend to blow with warmth. The result did not give any answers, but on the contrary, it raised even more questions because it did not thaw us. We remained frozen despite the thermal effect. After examining and analyzing all the places, the BB said with certainty that traces of magic were present after the Emperor. Our heroine wondered if he was not human. Then who was? The answer immediately came back. He was most likely a demon, because with so much magical energy, there's a high possibility that he had something from the spirit world. Otherwise, our heroine's spirits wouldn't die when she approached him. You would think that she was most likely a person possessed by a demon. It could also explain why the princess's magic didn't work on him. The lady turned and saw the prince in the window looking after her. He knows very well about the Red Queen Tatiana, who put an end to the witch hunt. He also knows the real reason why the principality was founded. It was created to hide the spirits that witches turned into after death, and this terrible secret that she personally and her family have hidden for 300 years now depends on him. No matter how strong or careful the spirits are, there is no guarantee that the witch hunt will not start again. The woman planned to simply kill the emperor. Then, the man with the power of his mind offered the girl a deal. She was happy when she saw her butterfly. They agreed to reveal secrets to each other. His Majesty expected an answer from the girl, telling her that he was not an ordinary person, but a half-breed with a spirit that is created from the union of a human and a spirit. Our heroine gained self-confidence because he can only control her spirits and uses it as a threat. The man asked her not to look at him like that, as she was also interested in it. Suddenly, he interrupted this battle by saying that she was incredibly cute. She laughed and replied that it was not cute at all. The maids brought the girl her favorite sweets, but she couldn't taste any of them because she was incredibly angry that His Majesty called her sweet. Kit didn't understand why the mistress didn't like the emperor, because she wasn't going to kill him. Bibi laughed when she learned that His Majesty still called his friend that way. Most likely he really considers her cute. The guest asked the princess to face the truth. They would never be able to overcome him, and that did not mean they were completely powerless against him. The girls looked around to see if anyone else was watching. Bibi said that most likely His Majesty has another name that is his spirit, and perhaps they will be able to make a deal with him. The woman didn't know if he would agree to it. Still, theoretically, there were chances, so they needed to study the entire lineage of higher spirits. The pink-haired friend immediately agreed, saying that she would do anything for our heroine. Charlotte's brother wondered why she was looking so closely at the letters. She simply replied briefly that she was busy and didn't want to talk to him. While the woman was thinking about why she had been so unexpectedly invited to a tea party, how she should prepare for this event, the woman asked what her brother wanted to talk about. When he told her that she had a letter from His Majesty, the girl smiled sincerely because she hoped that he had invited her to breakfast. I didn't know how to say it more correctly. He will tell you that His Majesty wants to entrust the girl with the construction of new mansions in the ruins. Of course, Hilary was not needed here, and the woman had to hand over her responsibilities to her. The brother asked the girl not to get ahead of herself and said not to do something she was not capable of, and the proposal to restructure was quite pleasant. But he added that the girl should come up with a way to win over the emperor, and in his opinion, Hilaria's help is the best solution, as long as there is no second plan. The sister didn't want to understand anything, and the brother came straight up and told her to calm down, because she had absolutely no chance of attracting the attention of His Majesty. He asked to preserve at least the privileges she currently has for the sake of their family and the common good. He told her not to try to become empress and to think about what a mistake he had made when he sided with the empress dowager, and asked him once again not to do anything stupid. He added that there were many different impositions, and any of them could take Adrianius away at any moment. The boy turned around and walked away. The angry sister threw a fruit at him, calling him a goat. Meanwhile, our heroine was reading a letter, congratulating her on her first public appearance, which also stated that good shoes would definitely lead her to a good place. The woman couldn't even believe that His Majesty only knew about her, because he was perfectly aware of her plans. Looking at the things the emperor gave them, the woman could not understand how His Majesty knew what her taste was. She thought these were truly beautiful things. The princess caught herself thinking what she feared the most, namely that she was starting to like it all. She didn't want to believe this fact until the last moment. Her thoughts were interrupted by Kate, who said that everything was ready. The princess ordered the crew to prepare for the repulse. She planned to visit the Duke of Clarinet's house. The man was talking to the driver. They chatted for a while about everyday things. The driver thought that the young man with the sword was from the Principality Genevieve, because only there are such tall and strong men. The young man said that he was a beginner and was still learning to use a sword. Only halfway through did he realize that the people he had to protect were Hilaria and Mrs. Beatrice. With all the festivities, the women were welcomed at the residence of the Clarinet family. Courageous men guarded the entrance from all sides. Hilary. I asked my friend if she knew anything about Jenna. The girl said that most likely she was a distant relative of the dowager empress at the 8th generation level. She said that it didn't matter, because she thought Jenna was good with a sword. The girl said that Count Romanov has 5 sons, and all are knights, so it's not surprising that the youngest daughter is well-versed in this. Bibi said that she didn't see the girl much at social parties, so she didn't have much to say about her, but everyone only spoke positively about her, saying how gentle and kind she was. Our heroine wondered who decided that she was really good. Jaina's family. The Romanovs, or rather their family, opposed the Gozli Empire and the Hermes Empire. They have a huge naval army to protect them, and they are the second largest family of Guinevere. But now they are not Romanovs but Winfried. The girl asked her friend to prepare a gift, and one that she would like. The princess thought that a sword with some glorious history would be wonderful. After this conversation, the girls got out of the carriage. The princess was immediately greeted by Charlotte, who asked why they were here. She said she would be happy to meet her in an informal setting. That woman simply remained silent. However, after a few seconds, they had a dialogue, where the lady said that she was still glad to see them, but she didn't know it would be them, so it was all so unexpected for her. Now our heroine realized that all this was done specifically so that she would not be able to gossip with Vaneka. He suggested changing the location, because he had prepared the crew. The lady thanked him for this, but she felt sad that she could not arrange a tour of her beautiful castle. Hilaria asked the young man about the same murder and what he knew about it, but he didn't answer, only showing emotion on his face, which made the lady laugh. They sat down together in the crotteau. There were a few seconds of silence between them. The shoes the emperor gave looked expensive and high quality. It was clear that he cared more about the stronger one than he thought. The guy decided to speak directly, so he told it like it is. The emperor is preparing for war, and he offered himself as his right hand. This was important to the girl. The young man continued to say that the plan had been maturing even before the coronation and had now remained unchanged. But they need to be more careful when recruiting knights and purchasing weapons, because their army lost Sharif and Oswald 200 years ago. That is why he and the emperor share the same opinion that victory requires full supplies of all resources, not just weapons, equipment, and food. They are also preparing a strong psychological attack, because war always means great sacrifices. The princess understood that in this case, neighboring countries would try to attack Winfried, and they would not be allowed to do so. In the future, as our heroine saw it, Guinevere was sacrificed during this war, and she did not want to let that happen. Plus, although the boy was an assistant to the emperor and does not know what is going on in his head, his only desire is the prosperity of the word of his native empire. Pilar said that she was here for the same purpose, and that because they had the same interest, they should unite. Realizing that the girl was not his enemy at all, he realized that he could come to the palace of the Steel Rose at any time, and the girl completely agreed with this. The lady immediately warned that she would not remain on the side of only one empire, because she did not accept any side. He agreed with her and said that she was right to act as she was flying. After this conversation, our heroine learned a lot of new things, namely that war is still being prepared, and it is unknown how this will affect the 7 counts of Nathan. If he simply follows the emperor's orders, everything will be easy, but if it is not, Hilary will still make him dance to his tune. Seeing the slum area, she was shocked by the terrible standard of living. Everyone who was here was in a terrible state. Children, drunkards, old people who were all together and only wanted food. The man replied that the emperor would not allow him to leave such a beautiful girl among these ragged people. The young man shared that His Highness had entrusted Charlotte with carrying out reforms in the slums. And at first glance, the girl may think that they came here to help her, but they simply chose a less suspicious place to meet. It's strange because in the future that our heroine saw Jana was engaged in these reforms. She asked the guy about it again, and he gave the same answer. Our heroine already understood that Charlotte's time of triumph would soon pass, but she still decided to help her. Not because she likes this guy or his sister. She just saw a lot of poor people here, and the state is the only one to blame for their poverty. All the troubles, misfortunes, hunger are the fault of the country alone. The girl recalled how her mother asked her to never forget otherwise in the poverty where she lived, and no matter how high she climbed, she should not forget what was happening right in front of her. Everyone was not against the girl's marriage with his eternity, because they were worried about the girl's fate. The mother hoped that she was not sad about the situation that had arisen. We remembered those words, and the lady said that her mother said that the government was to blame for all the people's troubles. The girl added that her mother would like the princess to be able to see the lower classes of the population, and the boy gasped at what he heard. Seeing this reaction, the girl smiled in her mind. She asked the guy not to fall in love with her because she was His Majesty's bride. The guy replied that she was saying terribly dangerous things. He grabbed his head because he didn't know how to react to all this. They got out of the carriage to look around, but there were no beggars here. This is where the secret negotiations ended. Her brother asked Charlotte to look at the area with Lady Beatrice, and she agreed. After all, BB and the princess had already managed to chat with the emperor's assistants. After saying goodbye to their friend and Charlotte, the girl and the boy came to the church. This was the place he had been talking about. In fact, the cross did not indicate a church, but a hospital, and there was also a strong smell of alcohol here. This was the place where a real ghetto was formed after the war 200 years ago. Even today, rumors circulate among the people about the terrible events that took place here. The princess could not accept this because they live in such a progressive era. The aide replied that this was precisely why the emperor wanted to introduce reforms, thus reviving this place and many others, to make them the same as they were before the war. Our heroine already knew that Hadrian's plan would be successful, because thanks to these reforms, the emperor would gain the support of the people. New houses that will be rebuilt in the slums will supposedly appear throughout the empire, and after the reforms, Marin Proton will appear. And there will be many rumors around her, including that she has come to the empire to marry His Majesty the Emperor. She was like a flower, very flexible, and her beauty was pure as a rose. This woman whom you want to protect. The inhabitants of the empire welcomed her very warmly, and she invested a lot of energy in the prosperity of her native land. This is the only girl who received absolutely all of Adrianius's love. She is completely different from our heroine, so the lady feels terrible. The girl's thoughts were interrupted by His Majesty's aide, who said that they needed to go through an underground passage and asked them to be careful. Although the lady did not want to interfere in the relationship of the future couple, she did not believe that they could live a happy life if something like this happened to her principality Guinevere. The guy saw that something was wrong with the girl. I asked if she was okay. The princess replied that everything was fine. She had just never been to places like this, and to quickly change the subject, she asked if the guy was conducting a weapons deal right here. In fact, there were just auctions here, and the weapons themselves were usually delivered a week later. The lady thought she could also take part in this, but he said that was impossible. They could not be caught, or they would have to endure much for the good of the empire. This answer convinced the girl. She added that this was why she liked the guy. The emperor's assistant asked her not to say such words anymore, but Hilary realized that Duke Vanya didn't even understand jokes and was always serious. They should hurry to dinner. The Duke is already waiting for them. He would like them to continue the conversation because the girl was incredibly attractive. At the entrance, they were met by a man in a mask who asked them to say the password. Tipping the hat to the Anaki said good luck would come to the one who tied himself, a clover blooming at the edge of the forest. And after that, the man in the mask asked the following. The guy had to name a number. It was the number 12. The couple was calmly let through, and they walked straight to the center of the auction. They arrived last, but still weren't late. It was very important to be in time for the start. The girl, meanwhile, analyzed the situation here with about 15 people, and no one can find out about each other's identity. Most likely, Count Narton knows everyone present and personally organized the auction. After all, Lady smiled. She had already sent her spirit to him to read all his thoughts and find out all the names that were at the auction. Meanwhile, His Majesty the Emperor was signing important papers, and he sensed something was wrong. Lady Olivia came to him. She wanted to talk to him personally. While talking to His Majesty, the woman marveled at his beauty, which she probably couldn't find in the entire empire. Olivia believed that one could not understand how jealous she was of him unless one became her. The emperor ordered the girl to go and pay her respects to the empress, adding that she must return by tomorrow evening. Otherwise, he will be very worried about her and will not be able to sleep. Of course, in reality, his eternity didn't bother him. He wouldn't even be upset about it. But if she didn't return, it could be a pretext for the destruction of Count Erasmus' family. Well, the girl promised that she wouldn't do anything that would make him worry. Seeing this reaction, Adrianius realized how far Olivia was from Hilary, because the girl would have been able to see the true meaning. His Majesty really admired this girl, remembering her. He thought that she must have quite a lot of fun on the walk. Olivia asked if they could have dinner together when she returned, but His Majesty immediately refused her. The girl tried to immediately arrange a meeting for the next day, but the emperor said that the girl did not understand that there was nothing special about her, nothing interesting. The lady was very upset by what she heard. She was so upset that she took her hands and started squeezing them, because it was all because of Hilary. Hearing this, she very quietly announced that she would leave. His Majesty looked indifferently in her direction. She was irritating him greatly. After reading Hilary's letter, His Eternity realized that the woman wanted to bring another man to the castle. "We'll meet my friend at the carriage." They talked for a moment. From there, her friend learned that Hilaria was very happy to meet Vanya. The princess said that it was thanks to the Duke that she was able to have such a good time. The lady also invited him to visit her, and added that she would be very glad to see him. At first, she was determined to go first to the palace, but then she wanted to stay and have dinner with him. Only after that did the girl remember that she had plans for dinner with the emperor, but she didn't say anything about it. She added that she was glad to see Charlotte. The concubine awkwardly replied that she was also glad to see her. They said goodbye and wished each other good roads, Charlotte shaking hands intentionally to meet her again. Sitting in the carriage, the friend angrily asked why the main character went to the auction. She didn't even think about the fact that her eyes changed color when force was applied. And luckily, Vanique didn't notice this. Otherwise, the witch hunt would have started again. The girl rehearsed and read the annotations because Hilaria could not be so carefree about it. But the lady replied that everything would be fine. Bibi replied that she didn't want to yell at him like that, but she was just really worried. The witch hunt began with people conspiring against the Guinevere family because they feared and envied their magical abilities. Winfred family, in order to suffer less damage, isolated them, and the red-haired queen. As it turned out later, this was not enough. The authorities tried in every way to help, and we don't believe it. And because the latter managed to escape and hide their abilities, the descendants of the red-haired queen were able to start a new life, and she herself chose peace and prosperity for her family and hometown instead of news and love. The desires of our traffic police flow from the same blood as its queen. She also wants peace for her hometown. We will see, albeit a small but very sick element of the future. She decided that she could not help but act, and like the queen would give her life for the good of the family. The princess's thoughts were interrupted by Bibi, who was due to arrive soon. Seeing that Hilara was using her powers and precious stones in vain, she immediately scolded her because she was wasting invaluable resources. In fact, the main character already knew most of what the auction organizers knew, and it could have helped them expose him. It was announced at the palace that Lady Hilaria had arrived, and the emperor asked if everything was ready for dinner. Marat presented the perfume, which was supposed to make the girl fall in love with His Majesty, and this bottle was incredibly difficult to find. Well, Adrianius thought he didn't need that, because he had a lot of charm. The emperor just wanted to have dinner, and didn't need any perfume bottles for that. Marat noticed that His Majesty was preparing very carefully for this dinner, as if it meant a lot to him. The subordinate prepared a bath for the princess. There was rose oil in it. Hilara thanked Chalaster for this and began taking a bath. After the bath, she has to meet Adrianius because she still doesn't understand what kind of person he is. When she looks him straight in the eye, she feels as if he knows all the secrets. The girl is determined to find out something about him that no one else knows, for example, about his connection with spirits. She needs something that can be a weapon against him, otherwise the game will be lost. Chester had prepared a wonderful outfit for the girl. Even though they were just going to have dinner, the main character asked if her subordinates were too emotional, But Kate personally exclaimed that His Majesty is very handsome and he needs to be answered. Even more, our heroine should be much more beautiful than him because she is their honor and pride. Pilar said that there was no need to worry about this because she was always beautiful. The arrival of Lady Hilary was announced, and His Majesty was pleased to welcome her. Surprisingly, although she arrived on time, His Majesty was not in the mood. He was curious to see how the girl coped with the first task in the empire that she was assigned. Lydia replied that there was nothing so complicated about it. She thinks it's because the kingdom is historically linked to the Winfred Empire. The emperor asked if she was with Lady Beatrix and Charlotte. The girl made the world nervous. He did not mention the Duke. The Duke was with her, so she made the most of her time. But the emperor knew that this was all untrue. He saw that he and the Duke had become very close. The main character decided not to hide anything, but simply to say that they are really on good terms. Slapping his hand on the table, His Majesty ordered him to stay with him tonight. Our heroine choked up at what she heard. She didn't understand if it was true. She added that she didn't let anyone into her bed, but for His Majesty, she would make an exception. The emperor replied that the girl would not even allow him to cross the threshold of the steel rose, so he asked her to stay with him. Thinking about the consequences of her inviting Duke Vaneco, the main character, realized that some kind of strong scandal was spreading throughout the palace. In this case, people might think that her relationship with him, and what is no different from other concubines, she should be the one who will not threaten the dowager empress. The main character apologized because it was her mistake. The princess added that she could not have imagined that it would upset him. In fact, the emperor was very angry. Hilaria was hanging out with someone else, and Nike still hasn't filed a report. Valeria promised His Majesty to stay in the castle. The girl also said that she would sleep in his bedroom. She added that it seemed to her that the emperor was very tired, and that it would be advisable for him to go to bed earlier. His Majesty blushed. Looking at her, he was shocked. She is a very charming and unpredictable girl. Pilar asked if she could ask for a change of clothes, but the emperor said that was not necessary as they would pick something up here. The girl relaxed and saw that the emperor was in a better mood. The girl's assistant was very happy because their dream was coming true. Hilary and His Majesty would spend the night together tonight. Charlotte secretly listened to the girl's conversation. She didn't know what to do. She couldn't even imagine that it would affect her so much. She thought about what she would do if it were Hilary, because this was the first time this had happened to her. The concubine was very upset. She was fed up with it all. The maid asked if everything was okay. Charlotte is tired of criticizing and envying Hilary because it makes her feel unhappy. If she cannot take the place of empress that she dreamed of so much, then let the princess take her dream place because she is more suitable for this role. She punished the openwork to throw away all red cosmetics. The same must be done with the outfits. Charlotte no longer wants to wear what she doesn't wear to attract the emperor's attention. She has realized that she no longer wants to tease His Majesty with her taste. She ordered the preparation of new clothes for her, which she wore before arriving at the palace. She wanted to move on. Night came. Hilary saw what looked like a huge red room with a bed with white bedding. The princess asked His Majesty if it wasn't too black, but the emperor replied that he really liked the color red. He added that he especially likes our heroine's red color because that's the color of her hair. Well, later, he added that he also loves her eyes and even Guinevere. I didn't understand you why she's saying this now as if she's ordering her teeth. Hadrian poured wine. It was made specifically for cold regions and was consumed cold. The girl raised a glass of the card. She felt the energy of the ice. The guy was very worried about whether she would like the wine, and as soon as she said she liked it, he was very happy. Hilaria added that it was the first time she had drunk such wine, and His Majesty was very happy about it. The girl asked for another glass. His Majesty asked not to overdo it with booze. The lady replied that she would not allow him to see herself in an animal state, but she had not yet become drunk so quickly. The woman also asked for wine. The emperor found her cute. The girl didn't understand why she was drinking so much. Maybe it was the atmosphere of this room, because it was very calm here. The main character drank more than she thought she should and asked for more. But the emperor refused, saying that she had had enough. After that, the girl got up and said she wanted to rest. As soon as the princess stood up, she immediately fell. His Majesty became very nervous and asked if the girl was okay. Hilaria said again that she had no strength at all. She couldn't get up at all. The emperor saw that the alcohol had done its job, and the lady was completely tired. He laid the princess on the bed and sat down next to her. He looked at her and said that the girl was very strange. The guy thought she had fallen asleep, but then the girl dragged him by the shirt into the same monument. Hilaria replied that she was beautiful. Her mother always said that she was the most beautiful in the world. Looking at the emperor, she asked him to tell her the same. His Majesty said what the girl wanted, and it made her smile. He called her strange. A second later, His Majesty grabbed her hands. He knew she wasn't strange, so he decided to indulge in a prank. Surprisingly, in this position, the emperor saw that the lady was even more beautiful. Hilaria offered to show him all her beauty. She quickly turned Adrianius onto his back, sat on him, and began hugging him. The girl called him pretty, and the emperor replied that she was the most beautiful girl in the world. Hilary replied that it was, and then they started kissing. Olivia became very angry when she learned that the princess wanted to spend the night with the emperor, and she turned to her father. She asked how things were going, about what she had asked for, namely about the witches. Dad also handed over the papers, but that wasn't enough. She needed information that would help her destroy Hilaria. Olivia said that wouldn't work, because she wouldn't be able to manipulate it. Suddenly, she was interrupted as new news came from the castle. The girl replied that her parents shouldn't pay any attention to it. The elderly people relied on her a lot, as always. They asked not to forget to preserve the honor and dignity of their family, because they hoped that the emperor would one day recognize both them and them. But if Olivia preserves the family's dignity, then Schuyler will take everything from her. Most of the records of the destruction were burned by the imperial family, who tried to find the remains, but it was too dangerous. For a long time, the concubine finally figured out how she could prove that Hilaria was a witch. Our heroine woke up from Katie's words. She was in tears. The girl was very afraid and worried that everything would be okay with the princess. It seemed to Kate that her mistress had slept for a very long time. Most likely the main character had drunk too much yesterday. The princess said that everything was fine with her, and there was no reason to worry about her. The only thing that upset the girl was that she hadn't changed anything since yesterday. After all, everything is very bad. The butterflies can't even get close to Adrianius's room. Suddenly, like the main character, the emperor's maid arrived and invited her to have dinner with him. The princess didn't even know what could have happened yesterday, so she decided to return to her palace and take a bath. The maid replied that it was not urgent. They knew that the girl would want to take a bath and had already prepared it. The lady was fascinated by the fact that the guy had thought everything out so well. After breakfast, we had to send out invitations to everyone for tea. Because of all these events, the lady completely forgot about it. Kate also said that after breakfast, she has lunch planned with Lady Charlotte and those responsible for finances. Surprisingly, she said it herself. Our heroine didn't even guess what else she said that night. Hilaria considered herself deaf. She had completely lost her grace and pride. The maid noticed that something was wrong, but the princess replied that everything would be fine. Little memories came to her mind every second as she kissed the emperor and spent the night happily with him. After all the memories, she considered herself a complete idiot, especially since she remembered perfectly well that it was she who started it all. She didn't want to think about it while taking a bath. Maybe it was for the best that her butterflies couldn't get into Adrianius's room. Surprisingly, the girl noticed that the more she communicated with the emperor, the more often strange things happened. His Majesty was meanwhile signing important papers, but in reality, all he had in his head were memories from last night. The assistant was very happy because it was the first time he had seen His Majesty in such a good mood. Marat added that he seemed to have fallen in love, and His Majesty partially agreed with this. The emperor said that not much time had passed since Hilaria arrived, but he immediately switched to asking about how the fight against flooding was going in the Romanovs' southern estate. He also noticed that you had given instructions to Marat a long time ago, so that he would not forget about internal security. The emperor looked at the spirit. He asked him if his mistress was brave. Adrianius's thoughts were filled with only one thing. He thought the girl was simply cute. Sipping tea on the summer terrace, His Majesty became thoughtful. He thought the princess didn't like the food, and she simply replied that she had no appetite. Most likely she overdid it yesterday, despite his warning about it. The heroine imperceptibly to herself began to look away. Then she added that she hadn't drunk in a long time, so she couldn't even expect it to end like this. She looked at His Majesty's lips. They radiated a smile. Vladdy remembered that night the emperor said that when he looked into her eyes, he realized that there were no more like her. It seemed to him that their eyes were a perfect match for each other. These words seemed strange to her, starting from the look and ending with the slightest movement. Everything about him became so important to her. Suddenly, I felt dizzy. The alcohol still hadn't worn off. Maybe that's why she's feeling something now that she can't even explain. The princess realized that it was all because of that damned wine. Adrianius said that she must have already heard that an emergency meeting had been scheduled due to the flood at the Romanovs' place, along with Charlotte and the treasurer. The girl replied that the maid had already reported this. It was at this time that everything happened. Everyone there drank water that was contaminated after the flood. The main symptom was dehydration. This disease spread throughout the empire, and many people died. The lady decided to add something more to this matter, and asked to consider her proposal. His Majesty was surprised by such an action. The lady replied that although a flood is terrible, something a little worse could happen, such as an epidemic. The man thought it wasn't scary, their empire, because it had never happened before. He guessed that perhaps the lady had reasons to think so. Since the Romanovs' house is near the sea, many use water directly from there. Many people still eat seafood, and the waste from it is thrown right into the streets, causing animals to carry it to all corners. Unsanitary conditions could cause a terrible epidemic that would sweep the entire empire. The emperor was pleased with the girl's work, because now he knew where to turn his attention. He thought for a moment and crossed his arms. The same feeling began to grip the lady again. Within a moment, the emperor completely agreed that this was an incredibly good decision. He was really interested in what to do better, whether to send more doctors there or to establish more hospitals in the empire. The princess thought he was quite cute, and yesterday he was even cuter. She suggested making clean water a top priority, and thanks to the rain, there is too much of it now. Still, the mandatory point of entry is to provide absolutely everyone with drinking water and simply warn the doctors so that they are prepared. If an epidemic does strike the entire empire, specialists will be needed who can care for the patients. Suddenly, the emperor asked what the girl would do if he got sick and whether she would take care of him. She didn't like the question. She answered briefly, and clearly that she didn't understand medicine at all, and there were many more people in the yard who understood it. He believed that the girl's care would help him much more, especially since they were already lying in the same bed and under the same blanket. This will shock the girl. She couldn't understand how this could have happened. Your Majesty will reply that she was trying hard to stay warm and therefore leaned against him. It's strange because she's never been cold and even always sleeps without a blanket. But the man just listened to the girl and admired her. The princess, looking at his face, felt how sweet His Majesty was, especially when he talked about it. We couldn't even guess what else the man could blurt out. Their pleasant conversation was interrupted by the Marat, who turned to the emperor. Adrianius apologized and said it was time for a meeting. Buttoning his shirt and getting fully prepared, he added that he hoped the lady would handle everything just fine. With a smile, the princess replied that it would be done in the best possible way, and with that they parted ways. But in farewell, the emperor stroked the girl's head, which really shook her. She couldn't believe he had just done that. There was a strange atmosphere around her. It seems like everything around them is only getting more confusing, and maybe they need to avoid meeting alone. Through the butterflies, the princess heard the maids chatting among themselves, but how Lady Hilaria slept with His Majesty in the same bed. She also saw how Olivia got angry with her and couldn't come to her senses, breaking everything in her castle. Only now did our heroine realize what she had done. Meanwhile, a letter was delivered to the Empress's office, and the maid was angry because she thought he would be handed over not through the maid but in person. This all made the girl very nervous. The family helper has almost reached his goal and will soon meet Hilary. One of the men asked what brought him here. The guy immediately said that he had to meet Beatrice. One of the maids said she was very disappointed in our princess because regardless of her status, she did not come and invite the dowager empress. She wondered how a Celeste could serve such an owner. Indeed, usually any invitations are delivered by maids, and to show all her courtesy, she sent the eldest of them to deliver this invitation. But Her Majesty's maid thought it was foolish. Chalster wondered how our heroine didn't listen to this and acted immediately. Papivko was glad that she was supported. Nadia ordered the Chalaster to be raised immediately. She turned to the Empress's maid and said that she had heard a lot about her. especially today's conversation. The other maid immediately said that she had been serving in Vladislav's castle for a long time, and as if simply pointing out the mistake of the other maid. Salah said that mistakes really need to be corrected, and suddenly said that the maid was wrong herself. Therefore, he has no right to teach anything to a Celester. The princess added that you need to look at yourself first before pointing out someone's shortcomings. The maid got angry and asked if our heroine wanted to say that she was wrong. That lady said she was absolutely right, and yet she was somewhat curious, namely, who in this castle stands above all the maids. No matter how much she worked here, she still hadn't been made head, and even if the dowager empress listened to her, she was unlikely to forgive her for such rudeness. This is the first time she has met someone like this, because in Guinevere, no one can afford such a thing. Hilara said she wanted the maid to become a polite stand for whoever could become her empress. Suddenly coming closer to her and grabbing her chin, they added that she should behave as her mistress had taught her. When she arrived and smiled, she said that she could do a great job teaching her etiquette herself. The lady quoted a phrase the maid had used to insult the girl recently. The woman bowed to her and apologized, saying that she had done wrong. Kilara said that to the maid's knowledge, the history of the entire Vladislav castle had never been such that an invitation had been personally delivered to those who invited, and she had no idea about it. The princess was serious. She said that the maid's owner would not be delighted as the dowager empress. She assured us that her invitation would be passed on, and we would also be looking forward to seeing the empress at the tea party. Calling her maid Hilary, left leaving the maid alone with her thoughts. When she went out into the yard, the woman said that she considered Shellister the best candidate for the role of head maid. The girl thought that the princess was aiming for the empress's place, but this was not the case, because our heroine said that she was not interested in the throne. She also thanked the maid for being completely on her side. But the princess added that she would no longer allow Chaloster to bow her head to such scoundrels. Turning to her, she said that there was no need to focus on little bugs like Maria. The maid thanked her for everything. In her future, she saw Celeste as the head of a metal rose and Merlin's handmaiden son, and after that, she took the place of the head in Vladislav's castle. But due to the actions of our heroine, this will not happen, so before she leaves the empire, the maid must be returned to her place. It's just that now Celeste is so sweet and naive. Her Majesty, the Dowager Empress, said that her maid did the right thing. And for such arrogant people, she has a special medicine. First, you need to bribe the maid with a metal rose. Despite her status as a princess, she is from an ordinary principality, and therefore has neither the money nor the means to bribe anyone. The maid understood what Her Majesty was talking about. The Empress hoped that Hilaria would learn a lesson from this. To meet Hilary, she was worried because the girl had not said a word and suddenly disappeared somewhere. The friend asked her to warn her about this next time, and she handed her a bag of precious stones. I heard what the Empress was saying through the butterfly, and she realized that she needed to act now. This made the main character laugh, because they have no idea that nothing will work out for them. The Emperor received a message about the budget after recovering from the flooding. He remembered the princess's words about the epidemic. He said that this was not enough, so he ordered to increase the budget and prepare appropriate measures with the Minister of Social Security before the epidemic. This surprised him, because there had never been any epidemics in their territories. The Emperor stated that there was a fairly high possibility that due to the flooding, all the water around could become contaminated, and therefore he wanted them to prevent an outbreak of the disease in advance. Still, the Minister of Finance wondered why His Majesty expected such an outcome. The Emperor said that this was enough, and he was not going to discuss it any further. He also ordered to discuss all this with Hilaria because she was in charge of this. Although the ministers were against it, because she was still little familiar with the affairs of the empire, the Emperor replied that she had already conducted affairs in Guinevere. He asked the question bluntly and wondered if they didn't trust the young princess. The sheriff and ministers immediately said that this was not true because they had heard a lot of good things about it, and he was sure that it would work out. Meanwhile, our heroine was bored. There was absolutely nothing to do in the castle. But in fact, I was walking with the Emperor. He even imagined how beautiful a girl would look on a horse. He discussed the birthday with the Ministry of Finance and others. The man wanted to hold a horse race in honor of the birthday. He wants this to be a real competition in which everyone can participate, and the winner receives a gift from the Emperor himself. There was a lot of discussion among the workers, so His Majesty said that it was over, because they had so much to do. Hilary's reaction when she heard about the horse racing. The man was also worried about why the princess wanted to leave the castle so much. Meanwhile, Bibi from the diplomatic embassy, Freuden saw that she must have mixed up the address. She was looking for a good pastry shop here. A subordinate reported the visit of an unknown guest. Hearing this, the girl quickly flew into the room. And when she saw the guy, she was shocked, wondering how he got here. But the cartel remained silent and did not want to answer anything. Meanwhile, Christina Genesis was walking around her garden. The butler remarked that it would probably be enough for today, because she had many other things to do. Actually, Christina Genesis was the second princess of Guinevere. From early childhood, she was interested in the outside world, and as a result, she secretly left the principality and met the Marquise. After that, they got married and had a child, and pregnancy became poison for her weak body. Choosing between the child's health and her own, she chose the child. The only thing that is on the verge of death for the girl is her older sister Helena. She gave half of her life force to save Christina. Only thanks to this did Beatrice come into the world. Bibi asked what exactly brought the cart. He said that he had been ordered to protect her here. What she heard surprised the girl. She ordered that no more talk of Guinevere be spoken of within these walls. She wondered if he really understood everything. Cartal Sebastian, the only younger brother of the late Empress Bernice in the future that Hilaria saw, avenged his sister's death. Namely, he passed on military secrets to Guinevere. He was the one who brought the principality to ruin. To prevent this, he was never released from the principality. Suddenly, Chris felt something. She quickly ran outside and saw Bibi. It's strange because she was embroidering her aunt's energy and couldn't understand what was happening here. But a second later, a woman appeared right from behind the cart. It was an honor for her to meet Christina. Her name is Ilia. She is the spirit that Helen sent. The lady asked if everything was okay with its owner, and he confirmed it, adding that the girl was sending greetings. Many warm emotions appeared on her face, because it was thanks to her that she was safe. Bibi didn't know if she could trust the quarter, and the spirit replied that he was fully following her orders and had come to protect Hilara. Hearing this, the main character's friend told her that in order to get into the castle, they needed to create a new identity and change their name to something else. The spirit also agreed to this. A small feast began in honor of this. All this was necessary because Helena is a direct descendant of the family of Empress Bernice. If anyone finds out his true identity, it will definitely lead to war. Therefore now the boy will not be called Cartal, but Ilya. This all confused Bibi a little, and she agreed, after which they asked if her task was to take him to Hilary. The spirit confirmed this and added that it was necessary to come up with his identity. The lady fully agreed with this and immediately began to carry out the task. Around Christina, she didn't know what it was. It was Mr. Helena's blessing. She wished her good health and well-being. Such words moved the girl. She thought it was very sweet. She seemed to feel a woman stroking her head, but instead of crying, it made the lady even more emotional. And then she could no longer control her tears. You would see how close the bond is between a mother and a woman. Still, it was impossible to be distracted for long, because it was necessary to come up with a new identity for the goal. Walking through the castle, our heroine suddenly felt an incredible nostalgia for the times when everything was wonderful. She was filled with various memories and emotions, the one she wanted to meet before everyone else appeared before her. Our heroine couldn't wait to meet her. Hilara was confident that her friend would take care of everything. They started a conversation discussing how hard it was to eat on hot days. Charlotte said that she had chosen a special dress for herself. It was completely different from the ones the emperor liked. They say that clothes made of breathable materials are now in fashion. She asked if she would like to order new clothes because the materials here are beautiful, but the girl was too young because she had brought a lot from home. Besides, she believed that clothes were not the main things. Looking at the surrounding landscapes, they decided to discuss further plans. Our heroine also heard that Charlotte bought new dresses directly from Guinevere, and it's strange because she didn't wear a dress sewn with flowers from Vladislav Castle. Charlotte meanwhile said that Hilary has really beautiful dresses. The girl replied that recently local seamstresses have been looking at the princess's outfits, and Hilary wasn't following fashion trends, but rather they were following her. Clenching her hands, Charlotte almost said that she wanted to be as cool as the princess, and most likely she would have to update her wardrobe. The minister and the sheriff arrived. They were in a serious mood and had to get down to business right away. Hilaria greeted everyone and added that she was glad to see them, introducing herself as Hilaria. In Winfred, she moved on to the main one. Such simple questions gave rise to many disputes between the men, and they began to argue continuously among themselves because one insisted on providing an incredible amount of money, and the other replied that this was impossible because His Majesty wanted to organize horse races. The second one started talking about how they had spent the budget very economically this year, so it wouldn't be a problem. Remembering her words about how she would leave the castle and immediately ride a horse, she was very upset because it seemed as if His Majesty was listening to her. The girl remained silent, and the ministers asked if the lady liked horse racing. Another minister replied that women don't like the smell of animals, and most likely she doesn't either. The man assured that he would immediately report this to His Majesty so as not to waste the budget, and Hilary was just curious. It is not clear to her that the horse races were cancelled 150 years ago, and why the Empire decided to hold them so suddenly. The Minister of Finance replied that the castle needed renovation, and especially since it was hot, now it was necessary to constantly keep the townspeople's spirits up. Hearing that she could also participate in horse racing, the girl immediately registered her candidacy. She was incredibly happy because this news was perfect. She had long wanted to saddle a horse. One of the ministers was surprised by the girl's statement. He did not know that she knew how to ride a horse. The participation of the other concubines, who most likely did not know how to ride a horse, was also in question. Lara still stood her ground. The girl asked if she would create problems if she took part in the horse races, and the minister meant it. In fact, this would be the girl's first participation in the race after 300 years before there had been a beautiful queen until her health failed her. He apologized for his rude remark because he didn't want to eat the princess, and our heroine said that the red-haired queen won then, and she wants to do it too. She ordered her ministers to convey to the emperor that she wanted to participate and win in these competitions. Lady is sure that he will never think that she is capable of winning because he does not know her full potential. And they taught her to ride horses. And even in early childhood, she won many horse races that were held in the principality. Of course, they were not professional, and there were many who simply refused to learn this craft because they were so weak, and it was impossible to see victory. The princess was looking forward to this day. She approached Charlotte and invited her to participate in the horse races, but she thanked her for the offer, but said that she did not know how to ride a horse. Then the lady asked if other concubines could saddle the horse. From here, Hilary learned that Jenna knew a little bit about horse riding, and Charlotte heard that she was passionate about it. You coincided with our heroine's thoughts and visions of the future, because she saw a genie with a sword and riding a horse. She escaped from the imperial castle during the turmoil of the war and became a knight, but because no one taught her, she died at the beginning of the war. Hilara wondered where she got her sword and horse riding skills, from which meant she had been learning them long before the war. Although she does not attach much importance to this hobby, it has potential that can be developed in the future. The princess invited Charlotte to dinner. She asked to take Jenna with her. The concubine thought that she had immediately offended her because she was kind and could sometimes do something stupid. The girl simply replied that they were like caterpillars, and they had to emerge from their cocoons and become butterflies, and if they didn't have time to do this, they would never turn into beautiful creatures. Charlotte was a little confused about what the lady meant. Hilara said that she still has no one in front of Gina, so it's better to invite Charlotte. She waited for the woman's answer, looking intently into her eyes. After waiting a bit, Charlotte saw that she could not refuse this, and therefore confirmed that she would invite a concubine. This comforted the princess now. Jenna and the Romanovs will be present at the dinner. The lady was very determined to win and receive summons from the emperor himself. Sitting in a chair, she looked out the window and admired the scenery. They were incredible. The servants always made bets, and this time was no exception. They believed that Jenna and the princess would order many different cascading reasons in one place, which would make you laugh or cry, depending on the outcome. The emperor watched these men from above. He did not know that gentlemen could afford to cry. He considered such conversations indecent, and that they were just unfortunate butlers, and to teach them at least some lesson would be disrespectful to himself. His Excellency the Emperor mentioned that the owner of the spirit still has a negative attitude towards him, It seems to him that she generally treats him as an empty place. It seemed to him that the spirit was saying that he was wrong. Based on these words, Adrianius believed that, in this case, the princess would be glad to have him at dinner. Perhaps she simply did not have to invite him. Hugging the cage, the man thought that Hilaria was probably waiting for him deep down. Looking at the spirit, he couldn't believe that it was so defenseless and small. It literally depended on his actions. He followed it, knowing that it would soon disappear. The emperor thought that life spares no one, even just for fun. The man considered Hilaria incredibly beautiful. She was the same extreme woman who completely changed his life and disturbed the peace in his soul. He believed that, until he got into her castle, nothing would change in his life. He must get there at any cost. To begin with, he decided to take the easiest route, namely to bring flowers with him and simply ask to visit the princess. Of course, she immediately refused him, saying that he was not on the list of invited people. And that's exactly why he came with flowers to make this evening better. After thinking a little more, Hilaria ordered a place to be prepared for His Majesty the Emperor. The girl was a little surprised to receive frozen flowers as a gift. She came to the table and said nothing about the flowers that would decorate tonight's dinner. Two elements were fighting in her thoughts, and she couldn't imagine how the evening would go on, because an uninvited guest had appeared here, who might not have the same effect on the other guests. After that, the lady smiled awkwardly and suggested that we move on to the meal. Charlotte felt something worse while eating the dish. She thought that these products were not suitable for each other. She took out a bottle of wine and said that it was made in their city. It was sweet, but with a hint of sourness. The girl thought it would be perfect for tonight. Gina and the emperor also wanted a glass of this wine. You know how to behave. The heroine refused this drink because she was afraid of bad consequences. She clinked all the glasses for the sake of manners, and as soon as she put down the glass with the drink, immediately asked the scientist how it related to horse racing and whether she had heard any news about it recently. The concubine said that she had heard about the horse races and that the princess wanted to participate in them. To be honest, she even managed them a little, because our heroine has so many talents. But suddenly, the lady invited Jenny to join her, because she had heard rumors that she knew how to handle horses. The concubine was surprised by the lady's interest in her life. She was confused as she took the tablecloth in her hand, but she didn't think her skills were enough to take part in horse racing. And after the flood in the Romanovs' place, she would like to solve domestic problems. She simply didn't have time to do even a little horse racing, especially now that her hometown was in such trouble. She was worried about her family and couldn't concentrate even a little on one task. Hilara replied that the flooding was contained and there were almost no casualties, and thanks to His Majesty's quick reaction, they managed to avoid serious consequences. She asked His Majesty if this was all true, and he added that she personally made a great contribution, and it was she who prevented this whole situation by telling him that unsanitary conditions could arise, and also that he temporarily increased the budget for this place. The lady was worried perhaps, because she didn't know that His Majesty would tell everything like that, a little embarrassed, but the lady replied that misfortunes in the family should not deter her from having fun. She asked what other reasons she might have for not wanting to participate. Suddenly, the concubine's memories returned. Everything around her seemed to have disappeared. She was alone and sitting at the table, feeling lonely and cold. Only one image appeared in her head. Her father found a sword under the girl's bed. He called her an idiot because instead of doing housework or preparing to be successfully married, she was practicing with a sword. She couldn't do anything about it because it was her passion and obsession. She always wanted to improve her skills as much as she could. Despite all her father's orders not to go near horses or swords, she still wanted to do it. Knowing what the girl was thinking, Hilara said that Gina no longer belonged to her family, so she could do whatever she wanted and wasn't obligated to listen to what they said. The lady was surprised to hear this. She turned towards our heroine and looked at her for a long time in silence. But here she wanted to say something, and the princess added that she had to be honest with herself. This provoked her. She gathered all her courage and decided to participate regardless of the opinions of her family. Hilara was happy to hear this. She finally had a friend with whom she could ride uphill. She recalled how as a child she learned this wonderful skill on her horse, which brought her a lot of excitement and positive emotions. The girls had a great time with His Majesty and Hilera. They discussed a lot and decided that such gatherings should be more frequent. It seems that the women have finally become at least a little friends with each other. Jenny a gift as a token of gratitude. She really hoped she would like it. The concubine said that she would be very happy to receive it from her. There was a good atmosphere between them, but this was not enough for our heroine. Suddenly, the emperor told Hilary that she and he must have a secret conversation that would last all night. Hearing this broke Charlotte's heart again. She blushed heavily and immediately apologized for leaving so early. She accidentally wished the couple a hot night instead of sweet dreams, then straightened up and quickly left the room. The wife also apologized in a more formal manner and said she would be leaving. She made a farewell gesture and also left the room quite quickly. The couple was left alone in the middle of the large hall. Hilary was confused about what kind of conversation His Majesty was having and sat silently, turning her face away. Still, she dared to ask to discuss with him what he wanted to do as soon as possible. His Majesty's mood was simply wonderful, and he smiled, adding that the ladies should not turn away from him because he always wants her to look at him. It all seemed strange to her. Why all this unnecessary tenderness if they don't even meet yet? She is on the side of her hometown, and he stands for victory in the war, and each of them pursues their own goals. This is why Hilary will never be able to be with His Majesty the Emperor. Her thoughts were interrupted by his gaze. He was looking at her too intently. In which case, the Empress should become a Milan Proton. Will come if nothing changes, so you need to play the main role to get his love. She didn't want to be an extra and play a secondary role, even if she didn't allow them to meet, because Adrianius's main goal was not to love Malin. This is just an alliance with the Preußen Empire. He is ready to do absolutely anything to win the war. The princess added that she had repeatedly said that she did not want to become an ordinary decoration in His Highness's castle. But he understands everything and even remembers her words for a long time. And yet the lady could not understand why he had come here with a bouquet. The man replied that he didn't consider the girl an ornament, and she should understand why everything was the way it was. The words she heard made the lady worry. It would be better if he had kept quiet, the girl thought to herself. But His Majesty the Emperor could not resist, and continued. Even though Hilary wanted to interrupt him, he still added that he was very interested in her. It was important for him to find out what she was trying to achieve, and why she had not invited him. He touched her face, and wondered if he was still a nobody and a completely empty place for her. Now our heroine understood absolutely everything. The Emperor stole her butterfly. Starting with the words about the horse, he heard all her words. He also specifically used the butterfly to find out his weak points. Hilary, I wondered what he would do if she said that the Emperor remained a stranger to her and was not at all interesting to her. The guy stood up abruptly, which frightened the girl. He now patted her on the cheek and added that he didn't care about anything else but her. He was simply obsessed with the princess and was ready to do anything he could. Hilary made him that way, after which the guy kissed her passionately. I want their kiss to be passionate and ardent, but she still had to push him away for her own good. The Emperor added that he would never do anything that she herself did not want to do. Perhaps this is love. They kissed so passionately that they bit each other's lips. They couldn't control their emotions. It was clear that they loved each other passionately, hiding it very much. The Emperor said that if she would just stay in her place, he would fulfill everything he had promised and more. Our heroine thought it was some kind of trouble. This is what her actions led to. It was because of her that the Emperor began to behave so strangely. While washing her face, the lady thought about what had happened. In all her failures, she invented the smallest butterfly that fell into the hands of Hadrian. She summoned all the spirits back to her. Her room filled with golden light. She found a spirit that was stuck. His name is Simendor. He controlled the others, and he is missing. Now she realized that everything was as she thought. To get the butterfly back, she would have to go straight to His Majesty's bedroom, even though she wanted to avoid it as often and for as long as possible. But she wanted to make sure that it was definitely a salamander, but she had to make sure that everything was exactly right. So she ordered everyone to take their places. Wife entered the room and handed him a gift from His Majesty, namely an ointment. This made her so angry that she shouted his name throughout the castle. The next day at the meeting, Bibi looked at her friend's lips. They were injured. In response to this, the girl simply replied that she was hurt by a cat. But she had better tell the truth right away, because the girl immediately started wondering where exactly in this castle there was a cat, because she really likes to pet them. She barely answered that rabbits used to be raised in the greenhouse, but now they have become friends with the cats there, and they all live together. Bibi immediately understood that this was nonsense, because there were only tigers here. After thinking a little, the heroine realized that the greenhouse was so large that a person could live there, maybe even a tiger, a lion, or a wolf. If she had a few, the emperor wouldn't be able to walk around her castle, and again, she found herself thinking about him. After looking a little closer, the friend soon realized that the cat that had scratched the girl's face was Adrianius. I made her laugh so hard that she couldn't stop, and Hillary said that the lady was taking a big risk right now. Even threats couldn't stop her, so she resigned herself to it. The heroine realized that it was impossible to hide anything from her friend, so if she had already come, let her eat the pudding, because it was her favorite chocolate pudding. Handing her a piece, the woman began to enjoy it. The maid asked Kate what kind of woman this was, that even the princess treated so well. The girl replied that it was her cousin. During a light snack, the girls discussed their own issues, and Bibi mentioned the same thing to Jenna. Unexpectedly, she pulled out 2 boxes at once, although our heroine was expecting 2, and the woman replied that she would soon understand everything. The princess asked Celeste to give everything to Jenny, along with a note. My mother asked who the guy was standing at the entrance, but Bibi said she would introduce them as soon as she let him in. Although more important was whether the girl remembered the place where she had chased butterflies. Without even thinking, she immediately gave the name of this place, namely the diplomatic embassy of Proyton, and that was correct. She checked the documentation about the ships that had arrived there over the past few years and found something interesting. About 3 years ago, the emperor and his family secretly visited these lands, but he told everyone that he was traveling and simply stopped there. However, they still haven't left the country, and there are even more who can confirm this, and the witness is a person the heroine can't even guess about. Rasmus is also involved here, but he pretended not to know anything. The imperial family was involved in smuggling and selling weapons, and the king turned a blind eye to it. If this is true, it means that the empress dowager has something to do with this. It's time to get to the most important thing, namely, who exactly is the witness? Unexpectedly, it was Merlin Proton. She loved the infras, so she had no more ties to the protons. At first, the heroine thought that she loved the emperor, and in fact, perhaps there was nothing more between them. They left it a mystery why the Princess Malin took risks and sold weapons just for the sake of money. Of course, people make various bad concessions for the sake of gold, but here everything is much simpler. The girl sought the place of empress, she wanted the throne, and Hadrian used her and traded weapons for bait. But if it comes to the wedding of these two, it is unclear how everything will turn out, or whether she should interfere in these matters. But on the other hand, if our heroine helps Merlin take the place of the empress, then I don't even know if she will be able to benefit from it. If the emperor wishes to tie himself to the family, there will be many more princesses in the Poiting family to serve as empress. From all these thoughts and stress, the girl didn't even notice how she overdid it with sweets, which made her dizzy. She asked Katie to ask about dinner with the emperor. Finally, the test is over, and now Bibi can introduce our heroine to a guy. He is sweet and kind. She will really like him. It was Ilya's lover and girlfriend. Hearing this, the girl swallowed her tea and accidentally spilled it. It was all even legal. The princess should have found someone too. But the princess did not understand how the eagle appeared here. Bibi said that they changed his eye and hair color so no one would recognize him. To begin with, the guy had to introduce himself. He took her hand firmly and introduced himself as Elijah. The girl's eyes lit up blue. Suddenly, she exuded a strength she hadn't seen in a long time. It was her mother. She asked if her precious daughter was okay. The princess replied that everything was fine. Her eyes filled with tears because she missed her dear soul so much. Hilera asked how her mother was doing, and she replied that everything was just fine. Her father and brother were fine too. Our heroine was very worried about her and was happy to meet her, even if it was just for fun. Hilaria understood that her mother had sent Ilya here so that he wouldn't worry so much. But the mother had a message for the child. She said that the Kartal would protect her, and therefore it was necessary to keep him nearby in case his help was ever needed. Our heroine was too obsessed with visions of the future. She knew that perhaps the cartel could betray her. But his mother replied that this wouldn't happen because she was always monitoring him and would be watching over everything. After this conversation, my mother had to go run some errands because it seemed like someone was coming. The princess wanted to be with her mother for at least 2 more minutes because she was very bored, but because someone was already approaching, she was forced to disappear. She became curious about who had visited her. It was the emperor. It was unexpected for her, because it was unclear why he had come to her right now. Meanwhile, Jenna received a gift. In the letter, the princess said that she wished her the best and was ready to help her at any time she asked. The heroine knows how much the concubine wants to see weapons in her hands and is ready to open new doors for her. In the box was a sword of unsurpassed workmanship. It was elegant and dignified as a good weapon should be. The maid was surprised when she saw the weapon, because you don't always see a sword as a gift for a gentle and fragile concubine. Gina couldn't even imagine that she would ever hold him in her hands again. As it turned out, it wasn't just any sword. It was a weapon made specifically for her, both in design and shape, with Jane's emblem embossed in gold on the handle. The lady asked her maid if she would report her to her father this time. As it turned out, only she knew about all the training, and it was she who reported any actions to her father. The woman turned directly to her and ordered her to choose whose side she would take, her or her father. Gina was focused. She put the sword to her head and made her choose. At that moment, the woman didn't know what to do, and Jenna was no longer going to follow other people's orders, because she was no longer the stupid and powerless daughter of the Romanovs. Now that Hilaria has shown her the way out, she is truly free. Her soul feels what has been closed off for so long. The woman wants to go outside. Adriania stood and saw Ilya holding the princess's hand. What made the situation even worse was that the boy leaned against the princess's arm and said that he was the favorite of the beautiful bride. But His Majesty was in a great mood, because the girl invited him to a meal. He immediately noted that the lady had her own pet. Despite the fact that he had allocated a metal roselock for her leaving, this beast required his decision. The princess could not understand what the emperor was talking about. His Majesty was not rich in words. This time, he simply grabbed the guy by the bars and threw him straight against the wall. Looking at the girl's earrings, he saw that he had not given them. Adrianius began to be very jealous. He believed that Ilya was a woman's lover. Usually, they are started if the man himself is not enough, so the emperor immediately asked what the princess lacked. He also had another complaint. He still hadn't crossed the threshold of her bedroom. It seems the heroine still hasn't understood one thing. He's ready to do absolutely everything for her. All of this has its price, and even for this toy to remain in the castle, something must be given in return. Leaning against the princess's cheek, he asked what she was willing to give him. The girl immediately suggested going into her bedroom. This was the answer the emperor had been expecting, and they began to kiss passionately as they walked into the room. Adrianius only had to push her to get her fired up again, while our heroine had no idea why he managed to get closer to her every time. Analyzing the whole situation, the emperor realized that the princess simply lacked attention, so he allowed the animal to remain. Hilaria promised that the day would come when she would definitely repay him for everything, and His Majesty replied that he would look forward to it. The friend saw Hilaria upset. She asked why Bibi left her, and replied that the princess was very persistent, so she decided to leave them for a while. And besides, she didn't hear anything that was happening. Now that it turned out that Ilya was really her cat, and that kissing her like an emperor was a scratch, she laughed, driving the main character to anger. Meanwhile, the guy was very worried. Vadia took his hand and told him to relax, because everything went well. His look was incredibly strange. She asked what happened, and he replied that he simply completely obeyed her and would do whatever she said. Shaking her head, the princess couldn't even guess what spell her mother had cast on the boy. Bibi said that it was the same magic as Ilya, and that he was a spirit, so it was probably better for him to stay in the castle so as not to be seen by others. Of course, the friend came up with the idea she was good, and if he stayed in her bedroom, the emperor would be very angry. The girl noticed that our heroine liked playing with the guy's hair. Emperor Proyton has other children besides Malin. There is a good chance that he doesn't even know about her absence, because the princess was at the embassy all this time, and I would ask what the girl is thinking about this time. But still, she had the idea in her head. that becoming a good fairy who granted wishes might not be such a bad idea. Malin sighed, and before that, she will have a request for Bibi. She wants to see her friend in the place of Empress Proyton. I realized that the girl's whole plan. The lady gasped. The opening was truly brilliant. The emperor sat in his office. He understood that he had done wrong, and he needed to control his emotions more. The duke entered the office and asked what had happened to the emperor. The emperor said that he had just returned from the castle of the Steel Rose, which meant that he had seen Hilary. He remembered the girl's words about how she only wanted a secure future for Guinevere, and that the empire was her last concern. That was the only reason she was here. Just remembering the girl, he couldn't forget her eyes, which burned like the sun's rays and resembled the bottomless ocean in color. She was very different from the other girls. The more they talked to her, the more they liked her. And now he was sad without her. Even though they spent a few hours together, it was enough for her to fall in love with him. The Duke will note that there is quite a lot of precipitation today, which is why His Majesty decided to meet with the princess today. His Majesty replied that he could look at his future empress whenever he wanted. Unexpectedly, the Duke decided to tell the story of the princess inviting him to tea. He thought that this would bring the emperor out, and he boasted that the girl had invited him to her bedroom. Everyone seems enchanted, and it couldn't be otherwise. Marat entered the room. He didn't understand what was happening here. The two guys were very tense and looked like they were about to kill each other. The princess entered the office and interrupted all this noise. However, she heard everything outside the door. Adrianius said that he was ready to watch her eat cute food for the rest of her life, but she came here for a different reason. The girl directly said that she wanted to return one thing that he perfectly guessed. His Majesty looked as if he didn't understand what was going on. The princess decided to speak directly and pointed to a beautiful yellow butterfly that she had raised with her own hands because she thought it knew where it was. The emperor replied that he had indeed found one butterfly that had been lost, but she had many of them, so it would be wonderful if she had left him just this ones. This was more of a proposal than a final decision. Hylara replied that she didn't know why the man wanted to draw the entire castle's attention to her so much, but I think that was enough, and she didn't want him to continue using her. The emperor noticed that the medicine remained on the girl's lips. It seemed that the treatment was delayed. Remembering this, the girl thanked her for the transmission that Celester had brought. It seemed to the emperor that the girl he was in love with could not understand that he was very interested in her. Even though he said he wouldn't do anything, it's impossible to fight this anymore. The princess wondered if he could say this sincerely when Malin was about to appear Proton. There is no guarantee that it is not a lie. And even more so, she does not want to give in to false feelings. Suddenly, Adrianius continued. He said that the butterfly she was talking about was indeed his, and that it was very important to him, so he wouldn't return it because it already had a name. Hearing that the boy called her a spirit, the hill lady was surprised. The emperor thought it was a beautiful name for a butterfly. This made the main character very angry. She pointed out that it was her butterfly, and that he should return it immediately. But suddenly, if she insists so much on this, then Adrianius offers a deal. If the girl leaves him a butterfly, he answers any 3 questions. He confirmed that he would give an answer completely honestly, without a single lie or understatement. Of questions lately, still she felt sorry for her butterfly, and for now it would have to sit in a cage. The heroine agreed and named the first question. It touched on Erasmus and the arms trade. It was interesting to learn how he was connected to the Dowager Empress. Although there was not only one question, the lady added that she had heard about how His Majesty was more kind to the opposite sex. So I could do her a favor. He smiled, closing his eyes, thinking she was mocking him. Sashin decided to answer. The Count receives bribes from the diplomatic embassy of the Proyton family. But he turned a blind eye, not only to the princess's stay. The main lady did not know, namely, how the illegal arms trade took place. The princess asked His Majesty to be more verbose. He continued by ordering me to take his hand because it would be expensive. Hilaria didn't understand why all this was happening. She wasn't sure it was worth doing. She didn't even have time to think about her decision carefully when His Majesty grabbed her hand, after which the heroine asked to answer. The emperor said that just as she summons butterflies, so he does with people, and this applies not only to Duke Vaneco. Hadrian asked the following question. I was wondering why he was turning a blind eye to the arms trade. Well, it was a simple answer, because he has information about the illegal trade, they know in which warehouses it is stored, so he decided to choose a different strategy. And now he is filling his weapons warehouses in case of war, of course, without anyone knowing about it. He added that all the weapons would be his, and once the right moment came, no one would be able to stop him. Would try to get Count Norton's weapons, and then her plan would be over. He decided to give another hint, because he is very kind. The weapon does not belong to the Protons. It is delivered to the Goth Empire, and then to the Kingdom of Oswald. Judging by this answer, the heroine's affairs are bad, because all the weapons belong to Adrianius and are shipped abroad. She was left with one question, and she wanted to ask about Malin Proyton, understood that it was impossible to do this so openly. So she asked why His Majesty had asked Prince Nartane. He will reply that this is confidential information. What was interesting, and in the future, was why Hadrianus invited him here. It seemed that the war was not only between the kingdom, but also between the courts of the emperor. He could easily have been killed while he was on a mission. The emperor asked who told her this, and the lady replied that she didn't need to know anything, because there were butterflies. Yet His Majesty gave an answer to this because he promised. It seems to him that the dowager empress has false hopes that he will lose her in the future. It was too obvious to him. He touched his face and turned to the princess, asking when she would invite him to her chambers. But the man added that promises must be kept, and then Hilary directly asked why he chose her. This confused him a little, and the lady replied that he had many concubines, and he was only chasing one. This question seemed strange to Adrianius, because he had said from the very beginning that he was interested in her, so you could just believe it and accept it as a fact. In the end, he decided to fully confess and say that he was no longer interested in anyone but her. The girl was shocked by this answer and asked him to come to her chambers at night. A faint smile appeared on the emperor's face. He held her hand and thanked her for the invitation. The lady was waiting in her chambers when suddenly a spirit appeared behind her and spoke to her. Shalara was watching Olivia. She was very angry because access to the Steel Rose Castle was becoming increasingly closed to her, and she had not found a single accomplice. All included with Charlotte and Jenna, as well as the Emperor and Dowager Empress, don't even deserve dirt from under their fingernails. It seems to her that there is not much time left for the torment, she just has to endure it, because the preparation for the day when the end will come to her enemies is over. They bribed people who spread rumors that the new princess was a witch, and even fabricated evidence that she would take it. All that's left is to bribe the senior maid of the Steel Rose Castle. Chelster is a good worker, but she is also a proud girl. She is one of those who will not follow the lead of those who control her. No matter how much they offer her, she will not take a bribe. So Olivia wanted to make her crawl at her feet because she wanted revenge. She called the maid Jean. Ordering to open the purse, the maid saw a large number of precious stones in it. The woman added that if the maid listened to her request, these stones would be hers. Meanwhile, Her Majesty, the Dowager Empress, was talking to Jenna and was curious about how the girl was doing. They had a nice conversation and chatted. Although the Empress had completely different things on her mind, the old woman believed that if they had been in contact with Count Narton's daughter before that tragedy, they would have been able to absorb Romanov's soldiers. Even if Hadrianus dies, it would be nice if the girl at least became his concubine. The Empress knew about the girl's participation in horse racing and asked if her father knew about it. She added that famous ladies of the capital do not participate in such vulgar events. However, the girl's origin is different, so she believes that her father should have told her about it earlier so that there would be no problems later. The young concubine's face changed. She became sad, but Her Majesty said she could speak to him. Jenna thanked her for her understanding. She also wanted to ask about Hilaria, because she wasn't at the tea ceremony with her, and would like to know what kind of person she was. The old woman had her own reason for keeping her by her side, no matter how long it took. She always obeyed her, and perhaps this time would be no exception. Suddenly, the Empress's plan didn't go as she wanted, and the girl simply changed the subject. She asked again, and the young concubine was firm and repeated once again that she did not want to talk about Princess Hilary because she had seen nothing and heard nothing. Jenna smiled. It was an unusual smile. It meant that the lady was completely free from her father's influence and was also no longer ready to obey Her Majesty. She added that if she was so interested in seeing her, it would be better to meet in person. All the time she spent trying to adapt the girl to herself, the old woman didn't take into account what kind of person she was. Diana also added that if the old woman asks her out again, she will refuse. Now everything has completely changed, and the girl sitting in front of her is not the same scared and worthless girl she was before. Jenna's castle and many other things completely changed, which made the woman very angry, because Hillary was to blame for everything. Her aggression knew no bounds. She blamed only one person for everything, namely the red-haired concubine. Our heroine has been through a lot in recent days. She thought about the emperor. He thought she was impressed by his strength. Of course he was stronger than her, and maybe that's why the butterflies served him, even though he usually didn't show his strength. She saw something in the cup. Suddenly she couldn't drink from it anymore, because maybe it was poisoned. But this shouldn't happen, because ordinary poison and alcohol won't take her because she's a witch. But that evening, when she drank the emperor's wine, she became very drunk. Suddenly, she realized that the butterflies were disappearing out of fear of Hadrian's migration. Only because of this did Hilera fall before the mighty power of alcohol. Remembering that day, she plunged into the past when she slept on her brother's arm, using him as a pillow. The emperor laughed at this fact, saying that their family simply had wonderful relationships unlike his. That night, Hilera looked at Adrianius as if she wanted to eat him. That lady said that wasn't true, and she was looking at his hand because she just wanted to lie on it. Looking back on her behavior, she couldn't believe how stupid she had been that night. And I can't even understand when the emperor became so friendly and listened to her drunken requests. Bibi is almost finished preparing her documents. She asked the Hillary butterflies to give her their power. The girl began to glow golden, and with it, various documents she had turned out to glow. The woman's joy knew no bounds. She wanted to bring the finished document to Hillary so that she would be happy. So I sent a letter to Merlin. The prothon from the emperor's lawyer has been passed. Kalara, meanwhile, finally found the question and understood what all these emotional swings were for. The emperor even broke out in a sweat from what he heard. The princess said that even her arrival in this room was a game. It seemed to him that the conversation was starting to be interesting. Hilaria said that at first, it seemed to her that the answer lay on the surface, because she was 22 years old and young and beautiful in the prime of her life. Her appearance greatly attracted His Majesty, and she was also cute. Most likely all of the man's manipulations showed his dissatisfaction or even sexual desire. She was completely confident in her words. As she approached him closer, she took a dominant position. The girl put the emperor on a chair and burned his tie. And finally, the princess offers him what Adrianius so desired: to spend the night together. They start kissing passionately, and everything seems to be going according to plan. Andrianov wanted to stop for a moment, but the girl didn't let him. She said she didn't allow herself to be addressed like that. Due to severe stress and great emotions, the guy's lips began to tighten, and the girl asked him to loosen them. Hilara said that until now, the guy had treated her as he wanted and played with her feelings. Now it was her turn. As soon as she started to take off his shirt, the emperor firmly pushed the girl away, taking her by the shoulder. Of course he didn't mind, but something still didn't sit right with him. Hilaria said that everything was fine, and that he should give in to his desire. His Majesty felt an incredible feeling. His body was about to explode. The princess said that they would enjoy this night, as if it were their last. Hearing this scared the boy, and he suddenly refused. He was very nervous, and leaning against the girl, his heart felt like it was about to jump out of his chest. The emperor was so in love with the girl that he simply lost consciousness from her. Hilara recalled his words that he would not love her if she was against it. Adrianius's love is dangerous because he skillfully uses and throws people away, and can do the same to our heroine, so the girl vows to be careful with him, who in the end allowed her to love him. They embraced Hilaria, the only one who treated him this way, and Adrianius, the only one she allowed to love her. They decided to turn off the light, so the emperor asked again if the girl was really ready for this. He was afraid that she might not be able to handle him. He will never let go of what he was able to gain through such strong sacrifices. His Majesty was already heading for the door, and Hilaria reminded him that he should turn her around a bit, pointing to his lips. She paid him off, and now it was his turn. The hand was pointing at the wound on his lip that he had made. He came back and asked what the lady wanted. Hilary only needed one interesting thing. Rather, after the fall of the Principality of Gennesaret, the history of Winfried was erased after the sudden death of Hadrian, who left no successor. Malin remarried to a distant descendant of the imperial family. In fact, in reality, Elin was practically able to take the throne of the empress. But then she went mad after the death of Hadrianus, and the empire collapsed. Melin herself died. Winfred invaded the Protons on Earth. Of witches, because despite the fact that she was rejected by society, she could not leave the country. This was the last of Winfred. Before our heroine saw the future, she sincerely believed that Malene loved Adrianius, but she really wanted someone else. It was not the emperor and not a place near him. The girl wanted to be past instead of the empress. She decided to take revenge for Adrianius, destroying her dreams, and Winfred was completely destroyed. After a short while of thought, our heroine declared that she wanted to control the Protons. She asked to entrust them to her, the emperor, thought that the girl lacked his majesty. The lady jokingly replied that this was exactly the case. She remembered that Adrianiuso had asked her to take his hand. So this time the lady suggested doing it herself. This surprised his majesty. After thinking a little, he said that he could do anything. She asked the princess replied that he just needed to be on her side and watch her create history. It will be both exciting and dangerous. Many people consider our girl a thief point fingers and call her a witch. The emperor could not even imagine that someone could afford such a thing. The girl was silent, smiling. She didn't want to say her name. She asked the emperor not to let her go until she had finished her work. She asked if His Majesty wanted to please her sweetheart. If so, then he should kiss her hand. He thought for a moment and turned away sharply. The guy added that he had to go, which surprised the girl. She asked if he would regret leaving like that. But Adrianius replied that that was enough for today. He definitely wouldn't regret it. He lived only for one thing. Remembering his father's words, he clearly heard his father asking to name not Narton, but Adrianius as his heir. That is why he must protect and return the lands lost to Winfred. Complete the feat. He is a prince who has not received recognition from the emperor. Imagine in front of the people, after the mission, crowned with success. It will be very noble. He went to this for a very long time. Everything went as if by magic. Hilaria appeared like a ray of sunshine from the first second of their meeting. She became the center of his world. For such a chromosomal blood type in a person like Katrina, he leaned against one of the doors and was shocked by his own situation. Meanwhile, the girls were chatting among themselves. Charlotte asked if it would be better to drink coffee now, because we need to take into account the baby's health. Last night, Adrian heard from the palace and was very confused, after which rumors began to circulate that he would soon have an heir. If this were true, the weakling would burn with shame. She asked Charlotte if she believed the rumors that I was walking in the yard right now. The girl immediately replied that knowing her, it was probably a lie. But from the girl's face, the princess knew that she believed it. They discussed the construction of the slum Shaboda, replied that it would be necessary to relocate and settle the local residents. Only after that construction would begin. The princess suggested involving the residents themselves in the construction if possible, providing them with a decent salary. After all, if they hire someone from outside, they will have to think about where to settle these workers. Charlotte agreed that it was a very good idea, but she didn't know how the residents would react to it. Hilary learned the result of such actions, because in the original story, the authorities forcibly relocated people, and this caused a very strong reaction. The crime rate in areas with migrants has increased dramatically. Complaints about them, and even the risk of an uprising, have spread throughout the area where migrants have settled. But slum reform was of primary importance, because now people there can't even buy food. Having mentioned all this, Hilary replied that in the slums, citizens cannot find decent work, and she thought that they would gladly agree to help in their own interests. Charlotte believed that, in addition to this, the level of education of the local population should be improved. She suggested teaching children to be pickpockets, and then hiring them to work, because clever children with a loose tongue will hand out leaflets. Because of this, more people will learn about the reform and understand why it is all needed, and the public's view should be shaped by the idea of improving life, not by how bad everything is. After the reforms, the city awaits a new future. Charlotte was surprised by our heroine's sharp mind. The maid approached Hilary. She told the princess about the unexpected guest. Her Majesty apologized and replied that 5 noble women were waiting for her. The belly said that she also didn't understand what was going on in the palaces. All these data probably didn't receive an invitation to tomorrow's tea party. Most likely they will apply here. Hera replied that in the future it should be made so that it would be quite difficult to get to them. Tomorrow's tea party would be in the garden, and the next palace would be a steel rose. Hilara said that they should know how strictly the selection of those who want to come will be carried out, but all subsequent tea parties. It is evident that they will discuss the affairs of the empire, and all ideas and new trends will be in their hands. Jenny didn't seem to like it, but Hillary really liked it. She thought the girl was cute. Jana replied that she also likes our heroine. Thanks to her, she was able to realize what she really wants. Moreover, she became for her not just a person who sent her, and another with whom she can drink tea. Hillary replied that suddenly it is just a beautiful word in the future. It hopes to become even closer to her. She asked Charlotte if she supported them. The girl suggested replacing the tea with alcohol next time. The concubines said that their family Fogravi kept a lot of all kinds of delicious alcohol and asked what drinks they preferred. Jana told us that she really loves beer after a hard, exhausting workout. It goes down just fine. Hillary replied that they preferred whiskey, and her parents tried to keep it away from her for over a year. Our heroine added that as girls know, alcohol quickly relaxes her. Suddenly, our heroine had a baby. She asked what they were doing here without her, and that was interesting. Charlotte asked if it was the young lady Genesis. She wanted to be invited to the party too, because she and Hillary have been friends for a long time and think she is trustworthy. Hearing this, Charlotte got very nervous and said that of course it was possible. Jana also replied that she would be happy. BB was very happy about this and started thanking the girls. Would be held at the designated place tonight. After reading it, Hillary smiled. As it turned out, you need to ask permission from the emperor in advance, because she has the right to invite people, but it is not in my power to allow them to stay here, which means if it is still necessary, Charlotte can afford it. Still, it doesn't matter for the Begonia Palace, because no one can forbid it to stay there. Hillary? I don't know. I didn't know if they should do that. The princess is already a local celebrity. In any case, she decided to think about it. But a little later, Charlotte was surprised, because Hilaria spoke so easily for her friend's high status. From Lady Proyton, stating that if she had anything interesting to meet tonight, she should vacate the residence and wait. It had his father's seal and the mark of the imperial family, so there was no reason to doubt it. It was done just perfectly. The girl didn't know who could have done it. Hilara wanted to get permission to enter, but did not think that Adrianius would go with her. The princess asked why he was looking at her like that. She wondered if it was her gaze or the eyes themselves that he liked. He replied that it was like looking at a magnificent flower that could not be plucked. Intrigued by the answer, the girl asked the squirrel if he would marry her if she asked. The emperor replied that the door of his chamber was always open to her, but the girl wanted to have a husband who would be enough for her. This surprised the boy. It seemed to him that even now she should have enough of a boyfriend. He asked about the golden-voiced boy, but she said that he could not enter her bedroom, only the guest room. He could not believe that the girl wanted it so much. It was clear that Adrian was very jealous of her. For this guy, he didn't understand why he couldn't afford to be jealous. He added that this pet can be neutered. The princess replied that it was quite inhumane, but in that case, the emperor would stop being jealous of her for him. But the girl did not think that this was a good way. After all, it was disgusting. Her Majesty took her hand and said that the idea was simply wonderful. It seemed to him that this was the first time they had gone outside the castle walls together. Instead of just holding hands and having to sit closer, that would be more romantic in his opinion. Sitting on the guy's lap, they became very close. She looked simply gorgeous. The lady flirtatiously thanked the guy for the compliment, and he replied that she was the first person who had ever made him say such words. After these words, the princess kissed him on the cheek. It seemed to her that she had sat down in the wrong place, but in a minute, the emperor began to kiss her on the lips. She didn't model sitting on the emperor and touching different places. She asked if she was sitting down. She wanted him to kiss her because she now felt like a bad girl. No matter how attractive she was, he would still keep his promise. He would not touch her without permission. It was sad to hear this, but in a moment he asked to be stroked again. Not hearing, she asked again, and the emperor replied that the girl should continue to stroke his hair. And it seemed very charming. He asked her to stop giggling, and after that, they kissed very passionately. Stroking his face, she couldn't imagine his expression when he met Malin. She didn't know if he would fall in love with her at first sight. In any case, tonight, all the time that seemed like a fairy tale to her will end and the carriage will, one might say, turn into a pumpkin. Finally, they arrived at the place. Suddenly, the blonde heard something. He hugged the princess tightly and said that he was very scared because that uncle was looking at him very angrily. This made the emperor laugh. He considered Ilya a little bastard, and he sentenced him to die immediately. The emperor took him by the shoulder, but he said that he would protect the princess to the last. His Majesty wanted to beat the boy up, but asked him not to fight, because he was no longer a boy to do such a thing. She suggested that instead of fighting, it would be better to go inside. The girl met them and added that she had been waiting for them for a long time. She found the letter very amusing. She recognized Princess Hilaria and Masha. The heroine was also happy to greet her. Milan added that she was honored to meet Tula, who is the subject of so many rumors in response. Our girl said that she was also glad to meet someone whose life is shrouded in mystery. I was very shocked, namely the emperor's words, that he would wait for her outside. This made her wonder what would have happened if she hadn't become his concubine. Suddenly, the emperor truly loved Milan, and now she doesn't understand who he will choose. In Guinevere, our heroine's mother was interested in how her daughter was doing. She added that if he and Oswald do something, they should also be ready. But everything was as Hilary said. Most of the Zacharians were helped by Oswald. Hearing this, the girl made a tactic that they needed to strengthen border defenses. The whole family wanted to get in touch with Hilary. They added that they would do a great job with their tasks, but Mom heard them and said she would think about it. Meanwhile, our heroine's conversation with the princess dragged on for a long time. The girl agreed and told her to be careful and wished her a safe journey home. This meant that they would see each other again. After this meeting, the girl and His Majesty were walking. He noticed that she looked tired. He added that he could help and take her to the carriage. Ilyusha got involved in their conversation. He said that he could also cope with the hostess and help her, but His Majesty was very angry, so he almost got into a fight with the guy. Our heroine asked the little rascal to get into the carriage right away. The emperor could have forgotten to just take him away. He smiled at the girl who was on his side. This was the first time His Majesty had seen Princess Milan in person. The princess asked. The emperor replied that this was exactly the case. Hilary asked if he liked her. The guy didn't answer anything. A blush appeared on his cheeks. She couldn't believe he had really fallen in love. But suddenly, he said that he didn't really look at her. He didn't even remember her face. It seemed strange to her, because they were looking at each other. The guy laughed, because the girl was jealous of him for her own. This made him laugh, although it wasn't a reason for a joke for our heroine. She asked him not to joke like that. She asked him to be more serious and be honest. The guy replied that he didn't look at Merlin at all. This did not match the thought in our heroine's head. She wanted to know the truth. But the emperor does not notice anyone except Hilary, because with her beauty, she overshadows everyone. Adrianius asked if she wanted him to start replacing other women. Well, no matter how hard he tries, his gaze remains fixed only on her. He doesn't need anyone else but her. He asked why she was asking this and knew that he didn't need anyone else. The girl stood there silent, not knowing what to say. Still, she knew he would answer like that. Even though his words were so sweet, she wished this moment would last forever. Time went on, and now the day of the grand tea party that had been planned for a long time had come. Everyone present gasped at Hilary's beauty. They couldn't believe how beautiful she was. She resembled a gentle swan. They were shocked what kind of fashion designer had created this wonderful dress. Charlotte asked how you were raised. She invented this luxurious dress for her mistress, which means that her preparations for the opening of her boutique are going well. It turned out to be true. They had been planning this ever since Hilary got to the palace. The maid was looking forward to opening her boutique. Charlotte assured that noble ladies would line up for such beautiful clothes. Bibi said that Charlotte could let her know if she wanted that outfit, because they would make it for her out of the queue. Jenny was also delighted. She would also like such a luxurious dress for herself. Bibi turned to Hilaria. She asked when the dowager empress would arrive. She also wondered where Olivia was, because she was still missing, and they were the main characters of the event. Our heroine didn't know this. Most likely it was planned that way. They are trying to do everything to screw her like a little animal. So the two most anticipated guests arrived for tea. The princess was happy to welcome the dowager empress. She regretted that they had not been able to meet earlier because she was often ill. I told your majesty that I understand everything, But it sounds quite strange, because she grew up in quite cold regions. Olivia clicked, because she was afraid that the girl would find out about the search for information about her. She thought this place was too bad. It was not suitable for the Dowager Empress. But this was not surprising, because the preparations for the tea party were being carried out by a native of Guinevere. Lydia replied that Charlotte recommended this place, everything prepared. Here is specially prepared by a pastry boutique, Alice. The princess also added that this brand of cakes is preferred by all aristocrats, and maybe Alice just can't understand it. It's just like you say, people's tastes are very strange. Surprised by this answer, she didn't know what to say to her. Unexpectedly, she added that she had simply made a mistake, because lately there have been rumors that harmony reigns between the princess and the emperor. Tilara fell for such manipulation. She simply replied that if such rumors reached her, then she would not argue about it. The senior empress dowager added that she was very worried, because Hadrianus still had the wind in his head, and as a mother, she prepared a gift to express her gratitude. It looked like a baby rattle, and was a gift for her grandson. The empress believed that the emperor's beloved duty was to produce an heir. She had heard that girls from Guinevere were weak and had difficulty giving birth. Her Majesty smiled, because she knew that this was the girl's weak point. She asked us if she would have such problems. Our heroine replied that everything would be fine, because her mother had 3 children, including her. She added that most likely someone is just spreading false rumors about her, and having a child is not very easy. She closed the gift from the woman and said that the empress would understand her, because she had associated herself with the imperial family. But still, I don't think now is the time for an heir. While she will still accept the gift with great joy, she will need it in the future. The woman clenched her fist in anger, which was to be expected from the princess. Still she agreed, and hoped that Hilary would take advantage of it. Olivia was shocked by our heroine's response. Her face radiated anger and hatred towards Hilary. Suddenly, Philaret asked Olivia why she was standing, because her place was in another part. Olivia and Her Majesty the Empress have yet to find common ground. At today's Hair 5, there was an important guest. It was Countess Nartan Hilaria. Sincerely thanked her for accepting the invitation. When rumors about her reached even Jennifer, she was very happy to meet her. The old woman was shocked that all these charming words were said about her. The fact that the Count of Nartan buys up all the weapons for Adrianius, but the Countess is not particularly interested in weapons. I am getting alkaline fabrics lace and accessories brought from abroad. This is her mania for the future sewing business. These are the most important and indispensable things. This is the booty our heroine will have. Hilaria turned and asked if she could be a little as erudite and educated as the lady invited here. Ferry each other. Whispering, we saw that everything was going well for our heroine. Kate said that there are still things she is not capable of. At first, the girl didn't understand what her colleague was talking about, so the girl added that Hilary couldn't protect herself from unforeseen situations. In an instant, Olivia spilled juice on such a beautiful, luxurious dress. She seemed to have done it by accident and began to sincerely apologize, adding that everything was falling apart for her, as if that was how it should be. The princess didn't even know what to say, so she was just stuck in thought for a second. Our heroine will have to be on guard always and everywhere. But Olivia didn't expect a negative reaction. The girl just smiled and said that everything was fine. It's certainly strange that everything is falling apart, the lady added, but she asked if everything was okay with her hands and suggested she go to the doctor because she was worried. When Hilary stepped on her heels, Olivia exclaimed, "Oh!" The girl added that there must really be something wrong with her. At that moment, she asked the clock if another dress was ready for the evening, and to her surprise, everything was ready. In an instant, the lady changed her clothes. Kate was shocked because it was very clever. She literally changed her dress in one movement. Olivia was simply crazy about it. She didn't know what to do because she had been beaten again. At the tea party, everyone was happy except for 2 girls, namely Her Majesty the Empress and her companion Olivia. She entered the hall of Her Majesty with pretensions having arrived at such a late hour. She couldn't sleep because Hilaria just wouldn't leave her head. The Empress shut her mouth because she dared to raise her voice at her. Still she accepted her. But even in Her Majesty's advances, the branch evoked many different emotions. She believed that our heroine was doing the wrong thing because she really wanted to go to the races and took Jana with her. She was like a lump of dirt that had fallen into a clean pond. She asked if Olivia knew how to purify water from insects, and she added that it was necessary to make sure that the princess never surfaced again. While the woman was a little worried, the horse races were being held for the first time in a long time, and there would be many witnesses. She asked if Olivia understood what she was saying, and she confirmed it. The concubine promised to do everything in the best way possible. Charlotte saw a new thing in the hall, namely a bow and arrows. It was not there before Hilary said that it was a gift from His Majesty, the Emperor. He calls her a sniper. The milkmaid didn't think it was strange, because she was a princess, a special person in his relationship. This bow and arrows of the past ruler, he gave the entire set to the platoon empress. It was about this set that there were many rumors. But in fact, there is something that he knew better than the bow. Namely the language. Charlotte corrected herself and added that she meant eloquence. There were many stories about how the former emperor had defeated many people with just one word. She thought it was the perfect gift for Hilary. The girls gathered for a hen party. They drank a lot and were simply delighted with this amount. For a successful tea party, the Duke's family sent dessert. Charlotte added, B was very pleased, because the evening promised to be very pleasant. Jenna meanwhile asked if the girls knew how to drink, because she wasn't particularly good at it. Princess Genesis assured that this is not a problem, because she drinks very well. And her friend Hilary, she added that she drank with the princess many times, but never saw her drunk. What she heard seemed amazing to her, but still the princess decided to keep the incident when she had recently gotten drunk a secret. Charlotte opened the wine and announced that today was the day they would see Hilary drunk. She asked her maids Katie and Chavester to keep something a secret from Hilary. Meanwhile, Bibi raised another toast. Hilaria was surprised by her friend because she got drunk very quickly. It's hard to get her drunk, but it turned out to be much easier. In good company, everything happens faster. They didn't even notice how they drank everything they had prepared for the evening. Our heroine also drank quite a lot. She even started to feel dizzy. The girls found it strange because Adrianius promised to come, but never showed up. Charlotte also got very drunk. She started screaming at her brother's meat and asking him how he was. Jana, sipping her beer, looked at the girls and felt a little shy. Now Hilaria and her were left alone. They decided to continue. The concubines began to drink to argue whoever would lose consciousness first would lose. Within half an hour, Hilaria was almost unconscious and officially lost. We'll see the princess being taken to bed. Diana said she should also go home. Kate took her with her. But Charlotte had a special order for the maids, namely that when Hilary got drunk, she lost her and Kate had to stay away from her. Meanwhile, the housekeeper took the girl to the emperor's castle. Our heroine was not at all against it, and she was ready to continue further when Her Majesty the Emperor came out to meet her. He was very tired of all these negotiations, as many powers from different kingdoms had come together to make peace, even King Oswald, who was on warm terms with the Dowager Empress. But he had only one thing on his mind, and that was to see Hilaria, because only she could bring him true pleasure. The subordinate reported that the bedroom was ready. When Adrianius entered his chambers and saw Hilaria sleeping very sweetly on the bed, he did not understand what she was doing there. The girl was drunk and didn't understand what she was doing here. She woke up at that very moment and asked what was going on. But when she saw the guy's torso, she immediately started addressing him as if I were you. She started asking various obscenities about what was under the robe. She was very happy because she could see absolutely everything with her robe open. The next morning, she was woken up and asked if she had had enough sleep. This was his community, Adrianius. The girl was scared today, understood why he was here. She didn't change how she turned out here. She behaved well last night. The emperor was very pleased. He had a very pleasant experience, all thanks to the princess. The girl didn't understand what was going on, but Adrianiuso asked how she felt. As it seemed to him that night, she received great pleasure from his press. The girl froze from what she heard. She doesn't even know what she did last night, because she doesn't remember anything. But that can't be the case, because it was with her help that the emperor lost his virginity. He added that it was not worth making fun of the emperor's chastity. He wondered if the girl would take full responsibility for the work done that night. Hilaria replied that she would agree to anything if the emperor needed it. To show her intentions, she began to undress, saying that it was not difficult for her because she was confident in herself. His Majesty could not believe what she said, The girl was persistent and calmly could undress with the same success as yesterday. Although she doesn't remember anything about that night to bring everything back to Adrianus's mind, she will also have to undress. His Majesty refused because he will soon be holding a meeting. Hilara replied that it wasn't too bad. Although she was sorry, she added that they would definitely do everything next time. Although she calmly answered all the Emperor's questions, she couldn't believe what she had done that night. The maids were very happy because their mistress had been looking for the Emperor all night. Hilara asked the plot if it was true that it was all a coma, and she replied that she personally took her to the Emperor. No matter how much our heroine ate, she still couldn't remember anything that happened the previous night. After recovering from the shock a little, she asked what happened to the rest of the girls. They were still sleeping. Hilara reminded herself again that she didn't need to indulge in alcohol so that this wouldn't happen again. The Empress and Olivia would arrive soon. She knew about Her Majesties themselves. These words didn't seem so dangerous to our heroine. What was more dangerous was that at any moment she could suddenly stab any of them in the back. She turned to Katie and Chevestor, who ordered her to make tea in the living room. A guest is coming to visit them soon. As soon as Duke Warneke headed towards the palace to the princess, the Emperor's aide pointed out that the main palace was on the other side. Although he didn't want to go in for a while, so that no one would notice, and he couldn't do it, he asked Marat if Adrianius was alone now. He replied that he had received yesterday's gift. He had to go back and see what was there. The Emperor was currently in a meeting with the Minister of Foreign Affairs, and Marat himself was busy. Vanek knew about this, which is why he decided to hurry to come to Hilary. Realizing that his plan would fail, he said that he immediately needed to go to Hilary to report something. Marat asked what exactly she needed to tell him, thereby hindering him. Suddenly, he said the correct answer to his own question, namely that the Duke simply wanted to consult with the girl. He was a little worried, but still confirmed it. As soon as the Duke thought that the annoying assistant would get rid of him, he offered to go with him to the princess, because it would be more fun that way, even though just a minute ago he had been talking about being incredibly busy. Even in such a difficult situation, he had to find free time. It really annoyed the guy. He couldn't do anything about it. Since he did not need suspicion from the Emperor, he had to act calmly. Strange thoughts appeared in his head that had never visited him before. In an instant, he realized that he just wanted to see her face. This whole meeting was just to meet the princess. Duke Vanek of Swain was welcomed into the palace by the rest of the Roses, one of whom said that the princess had invited him the other day. But the guy didn't know if it was rude for him to come without warning. The maid replied that it would have no effect, because the princess had said to hold it. As he walked along the corridor, he surveyed the area. Finally, he came to Hilary. She was sitting at the table and spilled tea. As soon as he saw the girl, his breath hitched. But as soon as he looked closer, he saw that because of the sun's rays, it was not our heroine, but his sister Charlotte. She said that she would call the princess soon, and she also added that it had been a long time since they had seen each other. I couldn't imagine what we would have here, because she and the princess didn't get along well. The concubine held her head. Her head still ached from yesterday's alcohol. The guy asked if everything was okay, but the girl simply replied that it was a slight hangover. She asked not to worry, because everything will pass soon. Waiting in the hall, the lady drank tea, while Marat asked if she had come. The girl wanted to talk about a business matter. After that, they started talking about Princess Hilaria, because she seemed very versatile in logic. Even before that, Marat told everyone that the Emperor personally chose every gift for her. The assistant got so carried away talking about his personality that he got bored. Vanek asked him to stop doing it, but the boy couldn't stop himself. He added that he had never seen the Emperor so excited, and that he had been going crazy lately. Hearing this disappointed Charlotte a little, but she understood that it would be so. Rumors spread quickly throughout the palace. Everyone already knew that the three ladies and the Count's daughter had gathered in the palace of the Steel Rose. They did not know why this happened. Marat added that Hilaria came drunk to the bedroom of his eternity. Vanek was as shocked by this news as his sister. He would have been pleased if the couple had become closer. But our heroine entered the hall, apologized for this, and asked briefly if the guests were waiting for her. The princess was happy to welcome Nico to her palaces. She was waiting for him. He replied that he had most of what they had agreed upon. She asked if the schedule for a month ahead was approved, and he agreed. But she didn't like it, because the schedule would be changed in at least 2 weeks. The guy didn't know why the girls were so confident and was very excited, but it was part of her plan. She decided to do this because she thought Vanique would not mind. She asked if they would keep it a secret. The guy just kept quiet. Suddenly, Marat spoke. He said that he would help her at any moment as soon as she needed his help. He asked not to be shy and to contact him at any time. Changing the subject, the princess offered Charlotte a snack. Our heroine nodded to her friend. The concubine agreed, saying that she would come after seeing off her older brother. On the way back, she asked if Swain was busy. Charlotte reminded him that he had said earlier that he wanted to get a job. She wasn't very talkative and decided to speak directly, grabbing him by the collar. Holding it like that, she was about to read a serious speech to her brother. The Duke began to listen carefully to his sister's words. She told him in a commanding tone not to approach Hilary, because if he continued to stare at her like that, bad consequences would be inevitable. What he heard shocked the boy. He didn't know that it could be read so easily. Although it was a small secret that the Duke kept to himself, and Charlotte herself found out about it, everything was visible in his eyes. The guy replied that it was just a headache and everything would pass. Charlotte wasn't sure it would end as her brother would have liked. She asked him to be careful, because love is an emotion that someone can take advantage of very easily. The man assured his sister not to worry, because nothing like that would happen. He clenched his fist and promised himself that this situation would never happen again. Charlotte silently looked at her brother, without missing a word. They acted as if they were no longer brother and sister, but strangers. Hilaria asked if her brother's farewell was good. She was glad that everything went well. Charlotte asked what exactly attracted Hilaria to her brother, and the girl replied that it was just an interesting business. Charlotte added that although she is not very close to the Duke, she thinks that in the future it would be good to build a wonderful relationship because in fact he is His Majesty's closest ally, and he also has a sharp mind. Hilary said that the girl didn't need to worry, because nothing would happen. Vanique is a person who knows well and sticks to his words, because regardless of whether he is a man or a woman, everyone can be charming. Understanding all the intentions of our heroine, Charlotte asked what she planned to do. She replied that there was nothing better than exploiting a man's love. No matter how low it was, she would be free to use both Adrianius and Vaneco. The strength of these guys will go to the good of what she wants. I seriously thought that if our heroine's relationship with her brother was revealed, the Emperor would simply use the girl and throw her out. But it so happened that now Hilaria is using two guys at once. Hilary replied that there was nothing to be afraid of. She added that men change their minds very often, just like the man who betrayed the Emperor. Meanwhile, he thought about his sister's words. He didn't understand why our heroine posed such a danger. The Emperor turned to the Duke and said that he looked bad. He sincerely wondered if the young man had eaten something wrong today. In response, he simply answered ambiguously, adding that most likely the man is right. The Emperor heard everything the girl said, namely, she will exploit the love of both Adrianius and Vaneco for her own purposes. This disappointed the man a little. He couldn't believe that the Emperor and the Duke were the same card for her. However, he still gave her permission. When His Majesty was no longer occupied with politics or other important affairs of state, he thought only of his rival, Vanica, and his beloved Hilary. His Highness the Prince arrived at the castle. He is the half-brother of Adrianius and the natural son of the dowager empress. She told him her story, although he was not yet crowned for her. He was still a prince, and in the future emperor. Currently, His Majesty is lying in a hospital bed, and his mind is dying, which is why it is necessary to take his place. The first principal turned away from them and fled to Bernhard, Duke of Clarinet, and many nobles supported him as the future emperor. As soon as His Majesty passes away, the new emperor should not be Hadrian but a step-prince. It was the empress who conveyed this thought to her son, and after some time he made himself felt. Still that day, the emperor announced to his own stepsons that Hadrian would be in power because he had never trusted Nathan with anything. That day, the empress was shocked by what she heard. She didn't know what to do. It was unclear why Nathan was pretending to be emperor, and after so much time, he finally returned to his family. He was met by Olivia's father. He was glad that now the empress would be at peace. The beloved son returned with the greatest gift for his mother. At the time when Hadrian abdicated as emperor, the widow argued for her rightness, and also for Nathan to still be given the right to be a prince. The man said that his niece was also in the mansion. He asked if the prince would mind if she joined them. Meanwhile, Hilary the butterfly could see everything perfectly. The guy didn't mind. Sitting on a soft sofa, Ilya was caressing his feet. Now our heroine also received information that Prince Nathan had returned. In the future, she saw he was a man torn between the emperor and the empress, ultimately being executed for betraying the emperor and selling the country to Oswald. I was curious what choice the guy would make now. Ilya noticed that Hilaria was very worried and asked everything in order. The lady replied that it was just his imagination after all, because nothing was bothering her. The princess said that she was only excited because she had not yet hit the target, but she was in the process of being detained. The subordinate asked if she needed to look for a victim nearby. Suddenly, she asked what the weakness of men was. She wondered what she should do when he did not give in to temptation. Ilya did not know the answer to this question, because he was weak only before Empress Hilary. He behaved so sweetly that the princess began to feel like his mother. She asked Kate de Chaloster, but she wasn't surprised at all. The empress personally sent her on an errand, at least that's what she thought.